A duel between titans. My golden gun against your Walther PPK. Each of us with a 50-50 chance.
6 bullets to your 1.
I only need 1.
Welcome back to Ranked. I'm Charles.
I'm McCurdy.
I'm Nathan.
Oh, God.
Man, there's only 3 of us, and we still had an awkward pause. The man with the golden gun makes a unique turn in the world of 007, bringing us into the personal world of James Bond himself, so far as his reputation as a spy within the shadow world of spycraft is concerned. After receiving a threat in the form of an assassin's bullet with his number on it, 007 is put on leave in order to seek out his greatest adversary yet. Not an evil villain hell-bent on taking over or destroying the world, but a fellow killer, Bond's equal but opposite, a man that doesn't fight for king and country, but has only loyalty to himself and to his wallet. And also has weird sexual kinks that Bond doesn't have because Bond's not a creep. McCurdy, what historical knowledge do you have for us?
Well, 1974's Man with the Golden Gun is Roger Moore's sophomore appearance in the James Bond franchise. The book Man with the Golden Gun was Ian Fleming's posthumous novel. So right after he passed away, this book had come out, and it was obviously on the bestseller list.
Posthumous.
Hey, George
Laundry.
Bush is talking.
Nuclear. Mission accomplished.
Hey, Bushy's talking right now. You need to shut your hole.
The energy crisis is still with us.
This film was written during the 1973 energy crisis. The simple history of that is the oil production in the United States pretty much had peaked by the end of the 60s, and basically the course of the gas prices skyrocketed. This is also going on during unrest.
There's an OPEC embargo, right?
It was also there was unrest in the Middle East. I mean, yes, there's always unrest in the Middle East, but this was like we had Iran.
This movie's timeless in that sense.
You had the Iran revolution, and so gas production or oil production is also getting halted in the Middle East elsewhere. So everyone was freaking out. Gas prices skyrocketed. It was a whole thing in the early 70s. Also in this movie, and we had talked about the last time, after the 60s, all the Bond films start to find, okay, what's good, what's fresh, what's new, what's in, and puts those, and reincorporates those into the films. Last time was blaxploitation. This time we get martial arts films, i.e. Bruce Lee movies, Fist of Fury, Enter the Dragon. That stuff is put into the mix. Let's talk about our villains. Patterson, several episodes back in our first episode, had spoiled that our big bad in this movie, Scaramanga, Christopher Lee, was actually step cousins with author Ian Fleming. What I did learn is that he actually had played golf with Fleming not that long before his death.
Which, considering the fact that he was Naval Secret Service and was privy to all kinds of crazy stuff going on in World War II history. I mean, he was part of like Operation Paperclip and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We just got banned. We just got shadow banned by Spectre. It is, I can only speculate. Like, we talked about Ian Fleming dying because of the stress of these Bond movies.
Yeah.
He also was plugged into some stuff. You have to wonder if like an old villain in his life popped up and snuffed him out. But, I got no proof there.
That's some good headcanon.
That's some solid headcanon.
That's some solid headcanon right there.
Somebody should write a posthumous book about Ian Fleming's untimely demise.
I see what you did there.
Maybe the biopic. Maybe like at some point we'll actually know, and his biopic will be kick-ass.
I think there was a Fleming.
That would be
biopic.
cool.
And originally for Scaramanga, they were gonna cast Jack Palance. You guys might remember him from City Slickers. He was also in the first Batman '89 movie.
He's the older,
pretty big character actor of the time. We have Maud Adams and Britt Eklund were both British. They both played the prospective 2 main Bond girls in this film. Britt Eklund was described in one newspaper as an astonishingly stupid blonde British agent in this film. We have a few returning characters in this movie, which I love returning characters in Bond films because it also shows there's interconnectivity between each film. Besides the main three that we always see, Moneypenny, Q, and M, this time we see Sheriff J.W. Pepper returns because he was a popular character in the last one. Let's throw him in this movie. J.W. And then, of course, there's another character that you guys may recognize, was the gangster in the beginning of this movie. He is supposed to be the same gangster that we saw in Diamonds Are Forever.
You want to sit in the front, Mr. Franks?
Connecting Sean Connery and Roger Moore like this. And then also, if I do George Bushisms, I cannot pronounce this dude's name. Hervé Villechaize. I probably butchered that. He's French. I don't know. I don't speak French.
Javier.
Yeah.
Javier.
There you go.
Bonjour, Monsieur Bond. I am Nack.
He played Nack. He was French. He was originally a painter turned actor. He had actually drawn and made all these pictures for all the actors and actresses in this film.
Did he make very small paintings?
But he was a horn dog for sure. Apparently, he had a lot of fun in Bangkok. In the behind the scenes features, they just say, he was up very late in Bangkok, and we all know that Bangkok is like a party town. One night in Bangkok, and the world is your oyster.
Man.
So he really made it his oyster.
I may be small.
I may be small, but I never forget.
But I am very big.
And then you guys should know he was in the television show Fantasy Island. That was his claim to fame prior to this movie, which that movie kind of gives that vibe, considering they're on that
a literal fantasy island. Yes.
His little island. Yeah, the location they filmed at is a very beautiful location, right? With all the islands and how they kind of like mushroom shaped. They even say that in the film. They're like mushroom shaped islands. No movie had been there before, right? But then because of this movie, that actually created a tourist attraction in the South South Asian Sea area. And ever since then, they always name like those islands, like, oh, there's the James Bond Island, based because of this movie. When they were making the movie, though, they were in such a secluded area, away from civilization, that they stayed at this hotel, and like Christopher Lee didn't know this till years later. Guy Hamilton told him that, like, dude, that hotel we stayed at used to be a brothel. Like, it was one of the local brothels there. So he's just kind of weirded out by that.
Meanwhile, didn't know the difference.
The Golden Gun itself, there were two versions of it made for the movie. You had the solid version that was able to like shoot like a cap or whatever, it made that effect. And then there was another one that Christopher Lee had to like put together, right? It's a pen, a cigarette case, a lighter, and I think cufflinks, right? Like those four things, you had to put it together. Well, he actually had to do it himself and had to do it like he wasn't looking because he had done it 100 times. So he had to actually practice doing it. Like he gave it to the prop guy. The prop guy was able to do it in like 2 seconds. And he's like, how did you do that? He's like, well, I take it home at night and I practice it. So that's probably what you should do. So he had to practice that a little bit.
The coolest weapon we've come across. I
agree.
And you can buy these online, and I donate to the Patreon we don't have, so we can all buy golden guns, please.
So, Charlie, you and I have talked about this movie. Nans, I know you're going to have your opinions of this movie, but Charlie and I have had many discussions about this film.
This is our Secret Service episode. You and I have generally not seen eye to eye on this
for sure.
film.
I think.
Char, did you write a poem?
I didn't write a poem.
God damn, I forgot to write a poem.
I didn't write a poem.
Yeah.
You have it very highly listed in your personal list. I have this film listed a lot lower. As far as the fandom goes, this movie usually gets ducked toward the bottom. And after watching it this time, I'm like, it's not the bottom, but I don't think it is as high as you put it.
I think it's probably the most underrated Bond movie. I think it's completely underrated. And it is another Guy Hamilton movie, which means it has a sense of humor.
Foo yuck. Sounds very tempting, Miss...
To me.
Really?
This one specifically, it rides that balance beam without falling off in a comedy or falling off in a completely serious. Like I said with Live and Let Die, I have a hard time taking that movie completely seriously because of the ending. The story elements are there, and like I said, it leaves you wanting more. Like there was so much more to explore, and they just kind of fell back on chase scenes. You do kind of get the sense with this movie that yeah, while there are 2 chase scenes, they're not just Bond trying to get away, and they certainly don't have a chase scene that literally just cuts and it's over. Like, imagine he's on the boat and he's running away from the bad guys, and we just cut and he's walking into the hotel room, and you're like, wait, what happened? What happened?
Yeah.
You know, this movie is serious, but with a sense of humor. But that humor never completely undermines it, and Bond doesn't just talk in a bunch of lame puns this time around. He has puns, because Bond always has puns, but the way he speaks is wittier.
I'm now aiming precisely at your groin. Says speak or forever hold your peace. How will I recognize it?
Tall, slim, and dark.
Says my aunt.
It's smarter, and it's not just lame, groan-worthy puns.
Quite revealing.
Yeah.
They definitely reel it in a bit more for this one.
Yeah.
It's a fun and cool spy movie. And like I said, it manages to ride both those extremes of the goofy and the serious without completely falling off the balance beam onto goofy, you know, like Diamonds Are Forever. It doesn't have the usual Cold War story. Now we have this, it's just serious personal business between 2 equal but opposite professionals. And that's what's so unique about it. And that's what makes this kind of break out and be more interesting than like just the same old, because now we do live in this zany world. Like we said last time, like Live and Let Die really brings, I mean, Diamonds Are Forever is just like jumping the shark. But with Live and Let Die, it became like, we live in this zany world where anything can happen, like the super spy world where anything can happen.
Well, it's like take less focus off of the Cold War and try to find something else that Bond can do. And that's what I feel like this movie also does. But I don't think... This is where I think like you and I maybe differ. Like I think we both agree that Scaramanga is great in this movie. I think Christopher Lee's performance is great in this movie.
My name is Scaramanga. Francisco Scaramanga. I feel I know you, although I never thought we should ever really meet.
I think he's just the best bad guy we've come across yet.
Yeah, I think he's
phenomenal.
I think he's great. I agree with you. I think he's great. But I do think the plot of the movie, some of the scenes in the movie, don't really make the movie great for me. And some of the other things in it, and I agree with you. I think Bond's better in this movie. But there's things in it that I'm just like...
I think Roger Moore is so much better in this movie. I think, again, last time around, he was just like...
He's trying to figure it out.
He was like a comedian. It was like he was stuck in his old role of like the funny man on TV. This movie, again, for the millionth time, as a Bond purist, Roger Moore is a fucking asshole in this movie, and I love it. He's an asshole to everybody, and it makes sense because this time it's personal. There's no, I mean, they straight up in the beginning of the movie, they're like, you're going on leave. Like, we're taking you off your mission. Why? Why am I being taken off my mission? Because this one of the top assassins in the world is trying to take you out. So your job is to go sort that business out because we can't be jeopardizing your current mission with like this happening.
Let me double dutch in and say you're talking about Bond being an asshole in this movie, and you like that. And for me, it's not that he's an asshole that bothers me. Like, I think the last time I mentioned something about how Roger Moore, they kind of wrote him like Connery, and it didn't really work out, and we don't really have really great examples in that movie. This movie has one of the two scenes that stick out to me, because while you're like, oh, he's an asshole, he's awesome, I'm like, Connery never really was like this. And it bothers me. Specifically, the first scene he has with Maud Adams.
Oh, you're hurting my arm.
I'll break it unless you tell me where those bullets go.
No, I can't.
His first scene with Miss Anders kind of bothered me. It's not so much that he's pulling her arm, but it's more or less that that's kind of the first thing he goes to. At least if I'm remembering correctly. Because I think Connery would have been a charmer.
You mean the woman pointing a gun at him?
She had a gun on him.
He had a gun at him? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something about that scene, though, that just seemed a little off to me, I guess. He does, like, what feels to me like left field, because, like, in that situation, I feel like Bond could charm a woman into not killing him. and he doesn't charm her. He grabs her arm, and you know what I mean? Like, I could see him being like, now, like, why do we need to, point guns at people? Like, this is, and like almost brushing it off, because that's where I could see Bond going with it, and it just seems.
But at the same
odd.
time, you could be sitting there being like, well, Bond just solved the problem with his dick again. Like, how do we save the world from Goldfinger? Just bang his girl, like you could be sitting there being like, that's the easy way out, He surprises her in the shower and she pulls the gun out on him, and then he disarms her.
But he disarms her, and then he's pretty mean to her for like the whole time.
Where can I find him?
I don't know.
And it's like, I feel like Connery at least would have been like at least charming about the whole thing, even if like someone was pointing a gun at him.
What would it take for you to see things my way? Do you come here often?
It's no good you trying to escape, Mr. Bond.
There is something I'd like you to get off your chest.
Put this down.
I see why these packets carry a government warning.
Give me that.
Certainly can damage your health.
Like, it works with Connery. There's something about Connery that he gets away with being mean. But like, more to me, because I guess the movies that he's in are so much more humorous and so much more lighter in tone, it seems a little off. It seems slightly off to me.
That's where I disagree, because this movie, as it is, without any of the other movies, including Live and Let Die, this movie, as a self-contained movie, I think he is closer to Bond. I think him being an asshole, again, and then you throw into the mix that he is, this is a personal thing, right, for him. That's where I'm like, great. If only he could always be this way. I wish he was always this Bond. The fact that they go back to a more comedic Bond is like, whatever, that's fine. That's like a different issue. But for this movie as it stands, I don't see it as him trying to be Connery. I think he still has that charm. He still has his Roger Moore charm.
Good afternoon. A water pistol.
But he's an asshole to everybody.
I'll say I didn't mind it, and I actually prefer his rendition of Bond in this movie to his first go at it.
Bond
I thought
should be an
The
asshole.
toning down of the punniness made sense, turning up the aggression. I mean, his life has been directly threatened, and he's a super spy. He's doing what he has to do, and as Charlie has mentioned in the past, like, sure, he is distracted by women at times, but it's, generally speaking, the job comes first, and that's how I kind of interpreted his first scene with Miss Anders, is like he had to do what he had to do, and she had a gun pointed at him. His life is in jeopardy, and he's just trying to get information that he needs.
You're improving.
I don't want you to twist my arm again.
I don't want to either.
She's just like the key to what he needs, and he takes it. So he's an asshole to Lazar. He's an asshole to Miss Anders. He's an asshole to Goodnight, and he's absolutely an asshole to Nack.
I've never killed a midget before, but there can always be a first time.
Oh, monsieur.
It's like one of my favorite moments in the movie when he does that. You.
I kill you.
Like, and he's like, I'm going to beat the shit out of this midget, because he, like, it's a midget who's tried to kill I'll kill you. He tries to kill him on several occasions.
You remember how last week you were talking about how, Kananga, you wish there was more with Kananga. You wish there was more with this. And I feel like that, I kind of feel the same way with this movie, where I feel like there should have been more of a dual thing. And even when I was reading about the history the research in this movie, it was like there was 2 scripts for this movie. Originally, it was Tom Mankiewicz's script. And then Richard Baybaum, who had written all the other movies prior to this, all the Connery films, comes back, does his draft of it. So it's a story between the two. It's basically, he took both. And in the previous scripts, though, there was more of like this, what I think we perceive in the movie, which is great. With Scaramanga and him, they're compared to each other. They're both assassins, essentially, like even though he's a spy and all that stuff. There was more of that in these original scripts. And I'm curious what that would have been. But I do feel like this movie, like one of the things that kind of dumbs the movie down for me, and it's not even the main thing really, is the fact that like the energy crisis is a part of this movie so much that it really dates the movie more so than even the previous films do with like the space race and You Only Live Twice and stuff like that.
But this movie is not about that. This movie, let's be clear about that.
I didn't get the energy crisis impression.
This movie is absolutely not about the energy crisis. The energy crisis is just a backdrop for this playing out of this drama between these two men.
The energy crisis is still with us.
It is indeed. And I can't jeopardize it or any mission by having Scaramanga hop up and put a bullet in you.
If that was the case, then the movie would end with Scaramanga getting killed.
But it does.
It doesn't.
But it does. The movie ends. The movie opens with establishing Scaramanga's whole business with like his most dangerous game set up between him and Nack on his fantasy island. The movie then ends with that, and then the energy crisis Solex thing is just an excuse to have the whole place explode. But the climax of the movie is when Bond shoots him in the heart, and we get that fantastic reaction of that's. I will say though, I do wish that when they cut back to Bond, I really wish they would have done a first person perspective, just like the turn and shoot. I wish they not looking through Bond's barrel or not looking through a barrel or anything, but seeing Bond head on, like with the gun pointed at him. But that is the climax of the movie.
But the Solex stuff is so much a part of the plot of the movie that drives the whole
But that's
film.
not what the movie's about. That's the MacGuffin. The movie is about these two men. It's not about the energy crisis. That's just background.
Yeah, watching the movie, I didn't get a strong, like, this is about the energy crisis impression. I obviously, they touch on it, and I looked it up later. That's how, not strong of an impression I got from the movie that it was about that. I mean, again, they just kind of mention it like, oh, you could sell this to the highest bidder or whatever.
This way, the highest bidder can build hundreds of these stations and sell franchises for hundreds more.
Charlie, I get what you're saying. It's just, to me, it's like, it's one of those things that just dates the movie in such a weird way because I'm
but
like,
that's not what it's about, though, dude.
It doesn't matter.
Like, the world is always in an energy crisis. Like, this Solex thing they're after, today, if this thing existed, governments would be fighting each other for it. Like, this isn't just like, oh, we had an energy crisis in the 70s and now that's gone. We are always in a never-ending energy crisis. And this thing, if it happened today, they would be killing each other over their Solex. I mean, this stuff hasn't gone away.
What I'm trying to say, though, is that this is like the technology that they're using in this film is like, that's not exactly how that works. And like, that's the thing that bothers me as more and more I watch this movie. I'm like we have solar panels now. Like, we know how solar panels work. It's readily available type of technology. And I do enjoy like the little subtle things where they said somebody even says something to the effect of like, well, an oil sheik might even just try to bid this thing so it doesn't come to fruition, so they keep making money off of it.
A monopoly on solar power.
The oil sheiks will pay you just to keep solar energy off the market.
The thought had occurred to me.
That's something I'm like, okay, that's cute. It's like a dumbed down version of the technology for like just general audience to be like, oh, like solar power, like, oh, this is
so now you don't like the movie because of the specifics of the technology.
It's not the only thing that bothers me about this movie, though, dude.
You might as well be upset about space diamond lasers and other stuff.
Like,
I know,
we
but
live
again,
in this
I'm just
fantastical
like, there's all
world.
this extra crap that I'm like, it's just. I feel like this movie
the
could have been
movie
less
isn't
fantastical.
about that stuff. This movie is not about
but it
that
could
at
have been
all.
less fantastical for a plot like this.
But what is you're saying that the technology is fantastical?
The technology stuff is fantastical. The car plane is fantastical. And it does exist, but it just seems so silly to me.
But like, it's the same thing as the jetpack. The jetpack exists, and like a car with wings on it does become an airplane. I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility.
And the thing does exist. The thing about it for me is like when you watch the movie, it's a goofy thing. It is a sight gag in itself. Versus like the jetpack, I can buy. The little Nelly, I can buy that. But then you see the sight gag of a car with wings on it, and you're like, okay, that's a little. I
don't take it that way. I
don't
take
care,
it as,
but like it's those little things that kind of tick the movie down for me.
But what I take the car plane as is Bond being bested by his equal but opposite. He chases Scaramanga all the way into this building, He thinks he can just go in and take him out. And the guy literally pulls a Bond on him. Like normally it would be Bond running away from bad guys, going into that little hangar thing, putting wings on Q branch style and flying out of there. I mean, Q even says that they're working on a car plane.
Yeah, the only gadget Bond gets is a fake nipple.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very not gadget heavy movie. But like normally Bond would be the one running away in the airplane car, and Scaramanga pulls a Bond on Bond himself. Again, showing that he's like, dude, like you and I we're not so different, you and I. Like they are equal but opposites. Remember how we were talking about how Red Grant, for some reason, he suddenly cares about money, where it was like he was all about the mission, and then suddenly he sells out. With this guy Scaramanga is all about the dollar bills. Yeah. Like and he's constantly talking about gold and money.
The KGB recruited him there and trained him in Europe, where he became an overworked, underpaid assassin.
You live well, Scaramanga. At $1 million a contract, I can afford to, Mr. Bond. You work for peanuts. A hearty well done from Her Majesty the Queen and a pittance of a pension. Apart from that, we are the same.
Scaramanga is all about the dollar bills, and he's only loyal to himself and his wallet, and then you have Bond. So it's like everything in this movie I just see as an argument about the two of them being equal but opposites, mano y mano throughout. And the movie is literally bookended with the Funhouse duel. And that's where it's like, that's the movie, is that bookend. I mean, the first duel ends with him with his eye on the prize.
Don't you see you're the only man in the world who can kill him?
And what gives you that idea?
The way Scaramanga speaks about you. Even has a likeness of you.
Because think about that. Think about being Scaramanga. You're the best at what you do, and you're so bored that you have your little servant hiring people to try to kill you, Most Dangerous Game style, right? And he always wins. Like, he's beat everybody so far, and he's bored. He wants that top prize. And again, if you ask me, what have I said every episode? Every bad guy needs a reason to keep Bond alive, because when they don't, like Live and Let Die, eventually the story just feels contrived, because it's like, well, we put Bond in this situation, he got out. In this situation, he got out. It's cool and clever and creative when they have a reason to keep him alive until they don't, and then they try to kill him. With this movie, it's the ultimate reason to keep Bond alive, because he wants to have a fucking mano y mano, literally a take 20 paces, turn and shoot duel that ends in a fucking fun as hell funhouse. That's why I love this movie. It's not about the fucking energy crisis. It's about these two guys.
I get all that. That's great. But again, the movie just doesn't.
Let's talk about the prologue, though. Let's talk about the prologue. I think it's the coolest prologue we've had so far. It's all about introducing Scaramanga. It opens up on their beach. The gangster shows up, and it establishes our whole Funhouse business and our whole Most Dangerous Game thing, and how, you know, like him and Nack have this hilarious relationship where, like, it's understood that, like, Nack is loyal to him, but then it's like he's really trying to push Scaramanga. Like, he's actively trying to kill him.
Bravo, Monsieur Scaramanga. You've done it again. This one was the best, n'est-ce pas?
Not bad. Not bad at all. But you'll have to do better than that if you want to come into my money.
I get you yet, and I'll enjoy every sou you leave me.
You'll be the death of me yet, Nack.
I think this prologue is so unique where, I mean, even Goldfinger had a prologue that had nothing to do with the story. I mean, which I consider just a wasted prologue. Like, it's cool to see Bond in action, but
we established, but we did establish, though, that it's like one of the first times that became a trope in the franchise. Like,
the first prologue ever was in From Russia with Love.
Yeah, and then it introduces Red Grant, and it's actually I think that one was really long, isn't it?
It's exactly 1 minute 52 seconds, according to his boss. Remember, he's like,
exactly 1 minute 52 seconds. That's excellent.
Well, that one and this one are the only two without Bond.
Let's just go through them real quick. So the Dr. No doesn't have one. It does the turn and shoot, and then it goes right into the opening credits. Yeah. So there's no prologue. From Russia with Love has the fake Bond
introduction
hunt.
to Red Grant, but Bond is in it. Like we think it's Bond, but it's not Bond.
It's a fake Bond. And then Goldfinger, he comes out of the water, he blows the thing up, and then he goes to bang the chick, and she betrays him in the shocking. And then
Thunderball has the guy getting killed,
killing Jacques Bouvard to avenge some buddies, and then taking off in the jetpack.
You Only Live Twice was Bond getting killed. On Her Majesty is about like introducing George Lazenby and Tracy Bond on the beach.
Yeah, this never happened to the other fella.
And then we had Diamonds Are Forever as Bond going after Blofeld and the plastic surgery and all that. And then we had
Live and Let Die is the death of all the MI6 compatriots. This one comes out of nowhere, and it's like, where the hell are we? What's going on? And I think it just beautifully sets up Scaramanga. And then you even bring Bond into it with the likeness of Bond that he shoots the fingers off, which then directly ties into his death, which we'll get to later.
This movie's like, hey, we need to kill Bond via Bruce Lee movie.
Yeah.
This is what this movie does, and this is one of the dumbest parts of this movie. And I only say that not because the action of it or that stuff isn't cool. Like, I'm like, cool. Like, I like Enter the Dragon. I like a lot of those Bruce Lee movies. They're great. But it's almost like the movie puts the handbrake on it, and it's like, wait, we got to come up with a reason why not to kill Bond. We're going to send him to this place where we have kung fu fighters to kill Bond. I'm like, really? Like, that's how you're going to kill him? Like, the other guys were like, we're going to send him to an alligator farm, and he's going to get eaten we're going to leave him on an island, he's going to get eaten by alligators.
Which I think that's great. I think the farm is great. Also, because the farm had their heroin production. It's the same thing, though, right? Like, you see, it's the same exact concept. Like, literally, take him to the farm is the same thing as
take Mr. Bond to school.
Take him to the farm.
Take Mr. Bond to school.
And at that point, I'm just like, come on, guys. Like, you had Nack with the trident, and he could kill him. And I was like, come on.
But that makes sense. To say don't kill him, you're literally in my home, makes sense.
Stop it! Not here. This is my home.
Fine.
Take him elsewhere. Fine.
But don't take him to a dojo where he can easily escape, or that like his one ally at this place is usually like,
are you all right?
How did you find me?
High Fat owns this place.
High Fat owns this place. Like, I knew this place existed. That's how we ended up here. And then it just so happens that my two what was it? His nieces, right? His nieces come out and kick the whole fucking dojo's ass, and you're like, "This is cool."
Wait, are you
but
saying
I'm
that?
just like,
are you saying? How dare you say that women can't? You're just saying that because women kicking a man's ass. How? Blah blah.
I think you're a little more emotional about the fact that a woman and a man are fighting, and she beats him.
Her character is being really fucking street smart. She could have done something smart. Use her brain to kill him.
You just don't think
literally
that women
throw
could
him
kick
into a
guy's
wall.
ass.
She literally
think that a woman could kick a guy's ass.
I can buy the school. I don't care that they base this on Bruce Lee movies.
That doesn't bother me. It's just the way in which it happens.
Scaramanga says later, like, you clearly underestimated Bond.
What do they teach in that school? Ballet dancing?
You know, you should have Scott Eviled him. You should have just shot him in the face. But even Scaramanga, like, you get the sense that Scaramanga wanted Bond to live. If Bond would have died, he would have been like, oh, well, then Bond's a bitch, like, and he's not number one anymore, and like, I wouldn't want to face him anyway. But like, you can tell that he's like gratified that Bond got away, and he knew that Bond would. He's like, Bond's gonna kick your ass, High Fat. You're a fucking idiot. But they show right away, if you're really scrutinizing the school, they show right away that these motherfuckers mean business. They literally have two guys come out and have a sword fight to the death. I mean, it's like, maybe the guy pulls through, but the guy literally cut his guts out, right? So then it's quite clear in that moment that Bond is going to be their punching bag. And like, I almost wish that like nowadays with like a grittier Daniel Craig movie, they would have beat the shit out of him until he was like bleeding and all that. And then maybe he would have been rescued. But we're still living in our like super spy world where like we're not in Daniel Craig covered in blood world yet.
Yeah, it doesn't. To me, it's just like it could have been something more, and that scene just doesn't
Bond,
work.
you get something from that scene. I do love the moment where the guy's like doing his routine, And then it's like, Bond, you're going to face off against this guy. And the guy bows and Bond bows, but then Bond just kicks him in the face. And that's Bond being like, I don't abide by your rules and I'm going to do whatever it takes to win, which at the end of the movie, that's what Bond does. Bond gets off the beaten track in the funhouse and starts crawling around behind the scenes to flip the script on Scaramanga. I see it as the exact same thing. Like, you think I'm going to do this. You think I'm going to abide by this, but I'm going to f*** you up, taking advantage of anything. If I can find the higher ground in any way, I'm going to find it. So he bests that one guy. Then they bring out Chula! Chula! And Chula looks just like Bruce Lee. He's clearly their Bruce Lee. He comes out. They have a fight. It's honestly kind of a weak fight. I chalk that up to like this. Again, this isn't Daniel Craig. This is like Roger Moore, who's like 65 at this point, and he's kind of slow. I mean, at one point, it straight up looks like Chula is about to give him a coup de grace, and then he lets Bond get up, and Bond just kicks him, and you're like, wait, what? Like, so there certainly are some missteps, but the misstep for me is when not that Hip shows up with the nieces. Like, that's like whatever. Like, they know that Bond's missing. He came back to get Bond at High Fats. Bond didn't show up. You can put two and two together that he would then go looking for Bond. It's coincidental. It's movie coincidence that he happens to pull up just as Bond swan dives out the window. Whatever. The misstep for me, though, is when they're running away across the bridge and they get in the car and Bond slams the door and Hip assumes that he got in. And that's fine. I mean, people do that to me all the time. They assume I've gotten in the car and they take off, but they usually stop and let me get in. Hip just keeps driving, and it's just an excuse to have Bond run past and jump in the boat and have a boat chase scene just like we had in the last movie. That's the misstep for me. But all the stuff up to that, I'm fine with.
For me, the movie is super strong up until the whole Bond gets captured by High Fat, thrown into the karate school, and then the whole chase scene where we see J.W. Pepper again.
That's like literally in the middle of the movie, too. I think that's like the middle half of the movie. It just kind of goes like this.
It's just like, it's like shoehorned in. Like, we need a bunch of action right here.
Okay, wait, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. Nans, you didn't like J.W. last time, right? You said that was like Diamonds Are Forever you didn't want. McCurdy, you and I enjoy him. He is definitively Goofy Bond. Like, J.W. Pepper would not exist in today's Bond, right?
No.
When Bond gets goofy again, as it inevitably will.
Can I get a vodka martini shaken? Oh, you know what? No. Can I get a vodka and Red Bull pint glass, please? Thank you.
No. They might bring back a character like this, but J.W. worked for you last time. Mm-hmm. Why is this J.W. different?
It just feels very out of place. Like, the last movie, like, really, really worked with what they were going for.
That was J.W. in his homestead. That was him in his homestead.
Louisiana. But I'm looking at it from like the analytical, like, let's analyze the film, like, what are the themes, that kind of thing, right? Yep. Last movie, it really works because we have black guy versus white guy, right? So how do we make it, again, like they even said, like, how do we know that the white guy's going to win, so how do we kind of just direct the audience? We'll put a dude that we can make fun of in the movie, and you and I enjoy the hell out of that guy. I just don't remember.
I mean, that's superfluous. That's like if you're just watching the movie, you don't gather that. You have to. That's outside knowledge bleeding in. My whole take on JW this time around is it would have been one thing had Bond just gotten into that car and JW was just sitting there. You'd be like, what the f***? But they at least set him up that he's there on vacation. Now, you can say that's coincidence, but again, we live in this crazy world. My honest take on JW this time around is I think he's more fun because now that they've switched him to an ally, he kind of becomes like our like meta audience.
What the hell is going on?
I argued before that like with Diamonds Are Forever, I'm like, wait. Everybody in the world suddenly knows who James Bond is.
And
it was like technically Tiffany Case was part of an evil organization or like part of a criminal organization. But the way they revealed it was with like a James Bond Playboy thing. And it's like, you just killed James Bond. Like it's clearly meant to be meta and like self-referential. Like I used to make this case about zombie movies. Like you have zombie movies where people know what zombies are. And then you have zombie movies / stories where people don't know what zombies are. So when Living Dead come about, they're like, oh, they don't say, look, a zombie. They say this dead body came back to life. You know, there's a difference. Diegetic means within the universe of the story, within the universe of the movie. Yeah. Non-diegetic is outside of that. The most generally used case of this is diegetic and non-diegetic sound. So like diegetic sound is like any sound that the characters can hear within that film universe, that sound that they can hear. Movie scores or whatever that the audience hears, that's non-diegetic. That's outside of the realm of the story. In Diamonds Are Forever, Bond's reputation is somewhat non-diegetic.
You just killed James Bond.
Is that who it was?
It's like, oh, the audience knows who Bond is because through pop culture, now everybody in the world knows who Bond is, and that has now bled into Bond's story. Whereas with like Dr. No and literally every other movie,
it's the agents and the organizations that know.
Only people who should know who he is know who he is.
The man the British will almost certainly use on a mission of this sort would be their agent, James Bond.
With this, Scaramanga knows who Bond is because he should, because they're peers.
We have so much in common, Mr. Bond. We have so much to discuss, and we will never have this opportunity again.
The weapons manufacturer knows who Bond is because he should, because he lives in that shadow world.
An unexpected honor, Mr. Bond. Your reputation precedes you.
All of these people know who Bond is because they should. J.W. Peppa knows who he is because he had a previous run-in.
Now, I know you.
Oh, no.
You're that secret agent. Secret agent? That English secret agent from England.
We don't have a scene where like some tourist recognizes Bond, like, aren't you? I saw you on the Today Show. Like that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Everybody who knows Bond should. So he kind of becomes like our meta audience where he happens to be in the car, which is, it's a fun moment where Bond just peels out and he's like, what the
hell is going on?
And then he puts two and two together and he's like, you're chasing somebody.
You're chasing somebody. Who you at this time, boy?
Yeah.
It's a fun callback to the last movie. He is what makes that chase fun, just like he's what made the chase in the last movie fun. So again, my question to you is, why does he not work in this movie if you loved him so much in the last movie?
I think I do like the conflict between the two in the last one. Like I like the idea of this guy, somebody who is a country bumpkin essentially versus a suave British agent, and they're at each like they're adversaries sort of. Like he does, like Bond doesn't know that they're adversaries, right? Like I think that you have that chase has dual things going on, right? Like you got Bond is in his whole world. He's dealing with Kananga's people. He's on the run. Yeah. You're watching it. Like the audience is watching it. At the same time, there's this other story also going on that is interconnected with it, with JW, and he has a lot of great lines in it. And like that's the other thing is just I think, and it's not that I don't like JW in this movie. I don't like him as much. You know what I mean?
Remember Mrs. Bell from the last movie, who just was the woman who happened to be in the airplane when he jumped in? Yeah. JW is Mrs. Bell in this movie, where he's sitting in the car. He's like, how about a demonstration, boy?
Yeah.
And Bond gets in. So I assume the script originally just had Mrs. Bell, just a random person, but instead they brought back JW. And then you have that moment where JW is like, he's like, wait a second. Like he's putting two and two together. The audience is putting two and two that he's putting two and two together. I think that is just heightening the material. Now, if he had one more minute in the movie, it would probably be too much. But you have the scene that sets him up. And then you have the scene that pays it off, and he still throws out some fun racist stuff, and that's always nice.
It's personally for me, I like the first movie a little bit more as far as his stuff. Like I like the Sgt. Pepper stuff.
I'm on the other end of the spectrum, I suppose. Like obviously, he rubbed me the wrong way last episode, but in this one, I actually disliked him less. I think I maybe even liked him when I first saw him. And I was like, oh no. And then we get the fun chase scene, and that was all fun. Although they went a step too far with the whole car jump with the slide whistle.
Let me point that out. So that is one thing about this movie that people hate about this movie.
You're not thinking that.
I sure am, boy. Never heard of Evel Knievel?
That is something that even the editor, everybody who's made this movie has commented multiple times and saying like, we really wish we never did the slide whistle. Like that kind of really undercut the stunt. Like it's a really cool, like don't get me wrong, that is a really cool, complicated stunt. I've been on second unit shoots. I've seen some really cool stuff. That in itself is a really cool thing in the movie. It's a funny, goofy setup that you're like, okay, the bridges are so like, just so happen to be lined in a certain way, but still, that aside, it's one of the coolest stunts in the movie, for sure.
It's like Bond has to get to the other side of the river. How are we going to do it? And they had fun of it. The slide whistle is
just
a
makes
goof.
it goofy in a cartoon.
Right now, I'm going to recut it. And I'm going to recut it with what it f***ing should have been in the first place, the Bond theme.
Yeah.
Silence as he's going over, and then would have been so. That's what they would do today, and everybody would be everybody in the editing room would be like, yeah, that's better. And then some intern would be like, how about a goofy ass slide whistle? And everybody would be like, you're fired. Get the f out of here. You're done. And they would have just put in the Bond theme. And I'm right now, I'm cutting it in. Boom.
Never heard of Evil Knievel.
There you go. There's a fan edit out there now that has the way it should have been. So on that note, though, let me go through my list of goofs. These are all my goofs. So I already covered the whole driving away from Bond at the school, which, by the way, that's another missed opportunity. I kind of wish when the first time that they were driving the nieces, and he's like, I got to drop the nieces off. Maybe it's assumed that they're going to school because they're wearing uniforms, right? But I kind of wish he would have clarified that. I wish Hip would have been like, I got to drop the girls off at school. And then later he's like, I was dropping off at karate school.
Yeah, that's the thing that's jarring about that. Is like
he
drops down at night, and then the next time you see him, it's daytime.
It should have been day.
I'll drop the girls, come back here and hang around.
If it was me, I would have. He would have said, I'm dropping them off at school, and who maybe it's karate's.
I say get rid of the nieces and just have Hip be good at kung fu or something.
Forgot to tell you, their father runs a karate school.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, obviously the whole thing there is like Bond has that moment where he's like, I'll protect you girls. And then the girls are like, F off, dude. Like, we got it. But I think the score is good, but obviously the music is not. I mean, like, The Man with the Golden Gun is just like not, like, who cares? Songs are never going to determine. Yeah, like, exactly. Like, what we have here is a situation where whenever they have a hit song, the follow-up is usually not as good, and everybody's like, that song's awful. And it's like, this song, maybe you could argue it works for this movie because it's very on point. The lyrics are all about the man with the golden gun. It makes for a really good Chinese theme. Like, they took this weird rock, like, I wish they would have just done, like, Chinese themed, like Chinese style for the whole song. Instead, they made it like this weird 70s rock thing, and it like, it's not as good, but the score based on that theme is fine, you know. Dun, 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 dun.
I've been
works
humming
really
that
well
all day,
in Chinese, but
I've been humming that theme all day. Like, it's been stuck in my head. It's like,
but the song as sung by Lulu is like, like it's the lyrics work. But it's No Live and Let Die.
It doesn't feel like it has some of that orchestral stuff. Like, if Scott was here, we could talk about that a little more. But it definitely just feels slightly out of place. Like, it's almost like they were trying to be like, what do we follow Live and Let Die with? The music as far as the orchestra goes. And then they're like, well, we have John Barry back. And then they were trying to try to figure something out, and it works with the movie and like this kung fu thing. And it doesn't.
Can we just get you for like a day, Paul? Can you come in and like
it doesn't
redo this song?
It's not as good. It's just not as good. It's fine. Like, I don't hate it. Absolutely, I don't like. It's not like, oh, I hate this one. But it's
okay.
Fine.
So it opens, and it's like, whatever. And then it closes too, and the closing song is
Good night, good night. Sleep well, my dear. No need to fear. James Bond is here.
Good night, good night. You know, and you're like, what? I do like, though, that James Bond is here. Like, have no fear, James Bond is here. I do kind of like that. Thematically, it fits into the movie so far as it's like, Bond's reputation is what's at stake. So it's like directly calling him out in the song kind of works for me. But overall, like just the music at the beginning and the end doesn't work, but the score overall works. So I count that as a goof that the music is whatever. The driving away from Bond at the school. Bond would totally have noticed the fuel line. I do love the scene with that.
For you, mister, 20 baht.
I'll tell you what, Sonny, I'll give you 20,000 baht if you can make this heap go any faster.
20,000 baht.
I'm afraid I have to owe you.
Bloody tourist.
Bond would totally have turned that fuel line on, but like whatever.
I just wanted to point out, like, that is Roger Moore's was like least favorite thing in his movies was throwing that kid in the water, apparently.
Really?
Because
even more than torturing Maud Adams. I don't know if she's double jointed, but he twists the shit out of her arm. But like, why is it a bad thing throwing that kid in?
He knew the water was really unclean, and he was like, he had to throw this kid in the water, and he like hated it. Like he just every time that scene made him cringe because of that. And it's always been pointed out
for like UNICEF or something.
Yeah, like he's like Roger Moore, the person, is definitely
it's
not
just a bad
Bond.
look, maybe.
Yeah.
He's like, this is
I'm
really
not James
terrible.
Bond. I'm Roger Moore.
We're throwing this kid in the water who, is like getting his one shot and being a movie probably ever. And is very lucky and fortunate to do that. And he's throwing this kid who probably doesn't have a lot of money to begin with. Maybe, I don't know.
Dude,
I'm
if I was that
assuming
kid, I would have been like, dude, hit me as hard as you can. Like,
yeah.
You know.
But he really didn't like that.
Oh, but you're a poor indigenous child. Oh, no, he's a kick-ass kid.
Pretty lady, 100 baht. No. 80 baht. 60 baht.
The kid jumped off his own boat and swam over there. Like, the kid is cool. He's literally a river rat. Like, he's a badass. Yeah. And I honestly wish I would have liked the kid to come back. Even like when JW's wife is like, oh, I want one of those elephants. Like, if the kid could have been there to be like 200 baht. And she's like, 200 baht? That's a steal. Like, that would have been a fun way to cap off that kid and have the kid, like, get what he wants.
Or like him saying, because doesn't he says, like, you're a very handsome man. Like, this many instead, Like,
well, he's like, pretty lady. Pretty lady.
Yeah. You're a very pretty lady.
80 baht, 60 baht, 40 baht, 20
Yeah.
baht. Like, that kid could have used one more scene. And then the sumo butt. The sumo butt is my final goof. Like, those are I have 4 goofs. And the sumo butt.
Why does he go straight for the butt cheeks?
Nans, can you call your mom and let us know about sumo wrestling? Like, if you does your mom happen to know that if you grab a sumo wrestler's diaper and twist it, does it hurt? If it hurts his nuts, then it's brilliant. If it doesn't, then it's stupid.
That was
I'm
what
gonna
I
guess
got.
no, because when they in actual sumo wrestling, I'm not an expert or anything, but I swear that's like part of the main thing they do is like grab each other's. I'm gonna call them diapers. I'm sure that's not.
Do they grab them?
They're called.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they grab onto those things, and like that's what they use to like throw each other.
them off.
You
the
would
circle
assume
and
that
stuff,
it was
right?
a rule that you couldn't touch it, but unfortunately I don't know a fucking thing about sumo wrestling. So like, if some sumo guy was like, "Oh yeah, like never touch another man's diaper, like that hurts your balls, bro," then I'd be like, "Oh, good job, Bond."
Yeah.
But otherwise, that's goofy, right? That's like, But and I put that like those are the 4 goofs. That's it. That's all I have for goofs. Like everything else, I think Roger Moore stepped it up for this. It's personal. Scaramanga has a fitting death. I think a giant fart explosion is not fitting, right? Scaramanga died like straight up duel style. Here's my list of setups and payoffs, and let me know what you think about them. They may or may not be in order. So we get a little touch of Scaramanga being cold to Miss Anders in the opening. Setting up her betrayal or that there's trouble in paradise, like literal paradise, which she at one point does kind of indicate that he has sexual problems. Like he only has sex with her before a kill, which is interesting because it's like, again, if Bond and Scaramanga are like equal but opposites, Bond is always ready to go, right? The guy is, whether it's for king and country or for himself, he's always ready to go. Whereas like Scaramanga, even though like having a third nipple, you're supposed to be like
have sexual prowess.
There are cults where it is considered a sign of invulnerability and great sexual prowess.
But he doesn't. He's more into killing than he is into sex. So Miss Anders is like, he's a weirdo and like he he likes to rub his gun on me and stuff. Like, he's a weirdo. Like, I want a real man. I want James Bond. And that's like another reason why Scaramanga would be a little insecure and need to defeat Bond, because it's like Bond doesn't need the blue pill. Like, Bond's always ready to go. Or Scaramanga's like, the guy's kind of f***ed up. High Fat sets up the fact that like he has this mausoleum he wants to be buried in, and like Bond isn't going to kill me, but then it turns out Scaramanga betrays him and says put him in his own mausoleum. The half-sunken ship in the harbor is set up as like it's just like some superfluous thing. Like, he's on a tour and they're like, oh, look, there's a boat that sank a while back, and then later he escapes onto it.
Yeah, that's of course a real ship. I also want to add that they start having this trope of having
MI6 field
MI6
operations
offices
and,
in these other places, and they're
like
always
everywhere.
very bizarre. Like, we had the submarine and You Only Live Twice. This time we have on this giant boat, and all of the walls are slightly slanted because the whole ship is slanted.
That was a cool.
It was kind of an interesting
base.
creative take on that.
Yeah, it's like where would you hide your secret operations? You know, and,
like in the movie, it even says there's like, this was a ship that crashed in '71. We just haven't done
under
anything with it.
mysterious
It's been sitting there.
circumstances. Yeah,
And it's just been sitting there, and now it's like it's there, and then they used it for the film. And it was actually one of the first things they shot in this movie. They filmed that sequence with a skeleton crew, with like a James Bond double of him, you know, jumping off the boat and getting on. Getting off the boat.
So that's set up and paid off. Bond thinking that he is the target for he's thinking he's Scaramanga's target. That sets up that moment where he's walking into the bottoms up, and you're like, Scaramanga's about to shoot him. Like, he's got him zeroed. There's no way he can miss. And then, oh wait, no, he was not Scaramanga's target because you know, it turns out later that Miss Anders is the one who sent the bullet. So like, Scaramanga doesn't even know what's up. He's just doing his mission. And so we think he's going to kill Bond. He kills the energy expert instead. Assembling the golden gun out of separate parts, that's set up when he kills High Fat, so that later in the movie, when he faces Bond.
But then, of course, the English don't consider it sporting to kill in cold blood, do they?
And Bond's like, don't count on it. Like, I'm just going to shoot you, bitch. And he just pulls out the golden gun, which he had been calmly assembling there right in front of Bond. The third nipple is set up in the very beginning, you know, on the beach.
A third nipple, sir.
And then Bond draws it for Q.
Very 007.
And then he wears it to pretend to be Scaramanga, which is fun. You think that he's getting the best of High Fat, and then it turns out that High Fat was onto him the whole time. Bond walks past the statues of the sumo wrestlers, and then later he walks past the sumo wrestlers, and then they turn out to be real, you know? There's like a fun little switch on Bond. Scaramanga has a Chinese junk that he travels around with, so when that's there at the end of the movie so they can escape, that's been pre-established. And then the biggest setup and payoff of all is the showdown at the beginning of the movie, and then that's bookended with the end of the movie. Even the little micro setup and payoff of he shoots off Statue Bond's fingers, so then at the end you see his hand and you're like, wait a second, wait, it's got fingers again. Wait, that's Bond. And then just when you realize that, that's when he turns and he just has that second on Scaramanga. That's Scaramanga's ego. That's him being that guy at the school who bowed all the way, assuming that Bond was going to bow too. He took for granted this thing that's always been there, and Bond took advantage of that to f*** him up. And that's all communicated in that look that Scaramanga's just like, oh my God. Like, in that moment, it's almost like, I would have loved if they would have tilted down and Scaramanga had a big old boner. You know, he has trouble getting it up, but Bond, right in that, like Bond, who he kind of has a man crush on, he's like, but you're so cool. You know, it's just, it just gets erect just as he lands on his face, you know. And on that note, maybe Scaramanga lost the fight because what does he always do before a fight? He bangs Miss Anders, but he killed Miss Anders. So unless he's fucking Nack, he didn't have anybody to have sex with before his throwdown. So like even that's a setup and payoff where it's like he was so hopped up with the jism in his brain that Bond just, poof, you know,
he was able to get him. Yeah. Oh, so two things that based off what you were saying though, this is more discussion. The first one that I didn't think about, but I thought like the whole thing where you're saying with the shot the fingers, I never really thought about that. But I also think it's funny is that, you know, he shoots the fingers off the guy's thing, and then later in the movie we find a guy has to build a gun.
A custom-built model for a client who recently lost 2 fingers. Please.
I don't know, that kind of ties into that a little bit. That's kind of interesting. I didn't think about that.
Did this mannequin have a real and loaded gun?
Well, honestly, I wouldn't put it past Scaramanga to have the statue actually be that authentic as to have an actual loaded gun. But as far as Bond is concerned, it's kind of implied that the last thing he does is go down and retrieve his gun before going back up and taking the place of the statue.
I think you've made a lot of great points, Charlie, about defending this movie for not being the bottom of the barrel. And I don't think it's the bottom of the barrel
I think
either.
this movie is far from the bottom. If you can't tell already,
I think it's somewhere in the middle.
Fucking far from the bottom.
I think it's somewhere in the middle. Because there's another setup and payoff that I think is that we need to discuss. And that is the setup and payoff of Miss Goodnight. It's basically, and this is the thing I've noticed with their character, is the movie doesn't really give that character, like they just kind of make the character obnoxiously annoying. And like other movies where the math is sound, when I say the math, things that you were talking about, like the setups and payoff, like that makes sense. That, as Patterson would say, that tracks, right? Just because something tracks doesn't always mean it's going to work for audiences. Miss Goodnight for me is the thing that like makes this movie not as good as it probably could have been.
But why? Because she's not a strong, independent woman who's a genius?
It's not that. It's not that. It's more of just the obnoxiousness of the character in herself. Like the first time we meet her again, Miss Anders is leaving and you're like, okay, Bond's going to chase after Miss Anders. He's going to go after Miss Anders. But this dimwit drives right inside, sees Bond, pulls up and is like, Bond, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm coming to pick you up. And you're like, and Bond's just like, I'm trying to follow that gold Rolls Royce. And the whole time.
Then he's an asshole to her, right?
You're a great help, Goodnight. Now, get onto the License Bureau and trace that car. AU603, a green rose.
A green rose?
A green Rolls Royce. There can't be that many in Hong Kong.
Courtesy cars. All green Rolls Royces belong to the Peninsula Hotel.
Because he's an asshole to everybody. So right away he's
it
like,
doesn't matter
Goodnight.
if he's I don't care if he's an asshole or not.
No.
But
What
like
I'm saying though,
Goodnight's whole story arc is just being in the way and always being a nuisance to the operation.
Then she pulls through. Goodnight always pulls through. So again, you just said that Goodnight drives in front of Bond and interrupts him. And then Bond is like, Goodnight, you're a useless twit, you asshole. And then she's like, hey, Bond, I know exactly where she went. It's a green Rolls Royce.
Green Rolls Royce
went right to this hotel.
Yeah, I know.
So she immediately pulls through.
I know.
Every time Goodnight messes up, she ends up pulling through. And like Bond even says at one point,
I'll take care of the maintenance man.
I already did. I laid him out cold.
You did?
Yes.
There's more to you than meets the eye, Goodnight.
You're more than meets the eye. Like even when he's like, hey, Goodnight, I came to rescue you from this guy who is like clearly threatening to you. Like the whole thing is like, if Bond gets killed, Goodnight's gonna get by this guy. Like that's all communicated in their looks. And she takes advantage of that guy who like underestimates her, and she literally just straight up murders him.
She's a part of the operation, and that whole scene is like just highlighting like she's a dimwit. She's a dimwit. Because
but it's
like
not,
everything
though.
is
She
like
always
he's
pulls
like,
through.
Here, take the Solex. Okay. All right, we're getting the thing. It's like, okay, but she has to unlock the trunk of the car to put the homing device. When we know, and we've seen this in other movies, they just could have put it under the trunk of the car. And then we only have that moment. The writers only have that moment just so that they can push her into the back of the car. I'm like, great.
Yeah, like
whatever.
remember in Goldfinger, the trunk is open, so Bond puts the tracker on Goldfinger's car in the trunk. Now, like, Oddjob could have come over and, like, shoved Bond in, too, but Bond did it without anybody seeing,
to highlight the moment even worse, it's just like, who has the keys to the car?
Goodnight. Where are the car keys?
Oh, I've got the keys.
And I've got the Solex, too.
Oh, we have Miss Goodnight has the
But it's
keys
like,
to the
Bond
car.
is being hard on her, but I like, Goodnight doesn't ever do anything where she's like, oh, I'm just stupid. Like, she is constantly doing her job. He's like, take the Solex and don't lose it, and I got to get back to help Bond. Why? There's a midget with a gun on him. And then she sees Knick-Knack walk out, so she follows Knick-Knack to his car, and she's going to put a tracker in the car because she's like, this is our adversary. Like, she is always doing her job. She may sound and kind of move in this kind of, like, ditzy way, but she's not like Rosie. Rosie was just like a up.
But Rosie at least is the great thing about Rosie, though, as much as I think Rosie's annoying, the great thing is Rosie is a foil for Bond that is an ally that isn't an ally. So you think she's an ally at first, and then she isn't. And I think that's great to have that conflict.
But we all agree that she's like a horrible actress and she's obnoxious. With Goodnight, she's always doing her job. She never just like blatantly f**ks something up for the sake of f**king it up.
I have to side with McCurdy on Goodnight. I think Goodnight is barely better than Tiffany Case, and we all know I hate Tiffany Case.
Yeah.
I agree that Goodnight is a bimbo, and so like you make a point that she comes through in the end, but she also messes stuff up throughout, and it's just like this whole ditzy bimbo.
But like what? Like
thing.
What does she mess up?
She messes the beginning up.
Madam, would you be good enough to move this inverted bedpan?
I'm sorry I'm late, James, but your signal from Macau only just reached the office.
I mean, yeah, she comes through. She's like, oh, well, all
But
of the
then
things
she
come in.
fixes
But
it.
it's
Like, she literally
I'm not
always
too worried
fixes
about the
it.
cars, but
Like, she literally
and then it's
always
like, but
fixes
then
it.
she's like, not. Oh, and also like, come on, like you went on and on about. She's like, yeah, this guy kicks his ass, or about Tracy Bond kicking this, or Tracy
unearned.
kicking that guy's
Tracy
ass,
was
right?
unearned.
Whatever.
Goodnight.
I don't agree.
Goodnight is
I don't agree.
an
But then
agent. Goodnight is a secret agent.
Goes behind the guy that's like guarding her or whatever. The only other guy on this island.
Yeah.
Knocks him on the head, but like the stunt is so it's so laughable.
Dude,
he just like goes.
My whole point with Tracy was that there was never a time where they established that she could kick ass. They could have the whole fucking movie. They could have had one on the beach. She could have tried to fight the guys on the beach. She could have fought back against Bond. There were all these times that they could have showed that she had some kind of physical prowess, and they didn't until the script suddenly needed it at the end. That was my whole case, which you then turned into sexism. But with Goodnight, Goodnight is a secret agent. Goodnight is an MI6 agent who...
She's not a very good one, and you would assume... I would assume that if you're a secret
why is she
agent,
not a good
you're
one?
going to know how to use martial arts. You're going to know how to do a lot of these things. And the movie
She
does
straight
not
up
set
murdered
that
that guy.
She knocks the guy into the water, and he's like, Goodnight, are you kidding me? Like, now the thing's going to blow up. Now we got to get out of here soon enough. I'm like,
how was she to know
she
that?
Does is
how was she
clumsiness.
to... Because dude,
Doesn't matter. Dude,
Bond,
if she's an
like,
actual secret agent, are you kidding me? Like this person, like
I guess
someone was like,
a different point
sat
of view
down there
is-
and is like, yeah, we're gonna hire you. You seem like
a different point of view would be James Bond would be better off without her being there. It seems like in most cases, it would have gone more smoothly.
But he
if
wouldn't
she
have gotten
wasn't
pussy
there.
at the end.
This could have been a complete, and that's why I think this could have been a different movie had it would have been like Miss Anders had just been the main Bond girl in this film.
I think that's it. Okay,
and
so
Goodnight
let's
was not
explore
in the
that.
film.
Let's explore that because
That
I do
would be
agree that
interesting.
I agree that it would be really interesting if instead because what we have right now as the movie stands, we have this whole thing about Goodnight is just super horny for James Bond. She wants a piece of 007.
James, it's wonderful to see you.
Everybody in this movie wants a piece of the legendary 007. Like Scaramanga wants a piece of the legendary 007. Goodnight wants to have herself a good night with 007. That's at least understandable. Because apparently, I mean, at one point she's like...
It seems like they have some history, too.
She's straight up like, oh, geez, James, you must be good. And he has that moment where he's like, I must be good. But probably the more interesting path would have been him going to the island and ending up leaving with... Maybe he spends like the second half of the movie on the island and he gets close with Miss Anders... and she helps him out. Like, maybe that's our different movie, right? Is that he escapes with Miss Anders.
Well, I mean, he could have rescued Miss Anders and tried to get the Solix back or whatever.
Yeah, I think
you know?
Miss Anders doesn't die. She gets trapped on the island. At some point, she escapes when it's just going down on the island. And because she's been there so much, she knows about how some of the stuff works. So she can help Bond get the soul.
Yeah, there could have been more of a back and forth with her throughout the movie, and I didn't need Goodnight. I really just I'm like, and again, Charlie, like I'm saying, like I've seen in other films, you watch the movie, and like you and I, like we follow the points, we understand how things work, right? How a script is written, and you know, like okay, if for instance, if you know, like, okay, well, the reason they have this in the movie is to create conflict with the characters. The conflict in the characters makes for a better, more compelling story. And I can see the filmmakers and the scriptwriters being like, let's have a character that gets in Bond's way and creates extra conflict. I can see that. But my point is, it's like you, again, with Miss Goodnight, it's like you have a character, like, yes, this tracks. The idea that we have this character that gets in Bond's way and it's going to create conflict. That makes sense. I understand why they would want to do it. The problem is, as an audience member watching it, the character annoys me. Like, I'm turned off by the character in itself. Even if you're saying, oh, that makes sense why she would put it under this. It makes sense that she knows, like, she pulls through and does all this stuff. It doesn't matter to me because as the film goes on, I'm like more and more annoyed with her getting in the way of Bond, where I'm like, if she just get her out of the fucking way and then had Maud Adams as the main Bond girl, I would have been like, I'd be a little more on board with the movie. And then you would have this thing where it's now like Scaramanga and then Bond vying for the same girl. They have like, this is my girl type thing. That would even work better with the conflict between the two characters because you want to support that idea that you've displayed to me. It's like Bond and him. They're dual adversaries. But now we have this other girl that's kind of there. Like any other Bond movie, they would have just killed Goodnight at some point, and then the Miss Anders character would have been the main Bond girl by the end of the film. I think it would have been a better movie.
My whole thing with Goodnight is I agree she's annoying, but there isn't a single time in the movie other than when her butt hits the master switch button, which is like whatever. I mean, they do that in Indiana Jones. It's just like is she ditzy in performance? Yes, but she never fucks anything up other than at the end, her butt hits the button. Like, that's it. And then Bond's like, hit every switch, and she does, and then you have that unlucky moment where the cloud covers the thing, and she's like, oh, I guess I fixed it. Like, that's unlucky. But other than that, every time she fucks something up, she then corrects it, like, immediately. Like, she continues to show, like, Bond at one point is like, oh, you're more than meets the eye.
And like I said, just because something tracks doesn't necessarily make it great. Just because something tracks does not make it good. Again, it's annoying for the audience because the audience is just saying, oh, "Can we get this girl out of here? Can we just shoot her dead?"
But I'm not saying that she's not annoying, and I'm not saying that she's great. What I'm saying is your argument is she fucks everything up, and I'm saying she doesn't fuck anything up. She appears to fuck things up, and then she pulls through. She's underestimated at every turn, but she always pulls ahead. And you're like, well, she's annoying. Why is she annoying? Because she fucks everything up. She doesn't fuck anything up. So if you just don't like her because she has an annoying voice or something, that's fine. But like, I do agree that it would have been interesting to see a story where Miss Anders is alive the whole time. And it's like, it comes down to like, you know, these two men battling for her in the end. Like, that's interesting. But the way it is that Scaramanga is like, she betrayed me, so I just fucking killed her, which was what she was scared of in the first place. Like, that's Scaramanga being like, I don't give a I like killing people.
Forget the girl, she's replaceable.
She's expendable. Like, I think that just only builds up his character. And then meanwhile, you have this back and forth going on where it's like, Goodnight wants to bang Bond. Bond is like, F off, I'm busy. And then later, because he doesn't have a mission, he's like, hey, how about you and I tonight, we bang.
There's really nothing very much for us to do tonight. Or is that?
And she's like, no, Bond, I'm not just going to be one of your girls. And then she's like, but I have always wanted this. So like my hard to get routine didn't work out. Just when they try to bang, who comes in? Miss Anders comes in. So we have Bond literally juggling two chicks in his bedroom. And he's like, sorry, duty calls. I need to bang this other girl. And she's just like all pissed off about it. Like, I honestly, I agree with you that she's annoying. But I do think that little subplot is fun where these two secret agents are constantly trying to and the world just keeps getting in the way, even all the way up into the end where they're like, we have all the time in the world, babe. We got this slow boat from China. And then who shows up? Nack shows up. Then when they try to again, who shows up? M shows up. And now it's like, oh my God, like to the point where finally Bond is like,
good night, sir.
The world, off so we can finally get laid. Like, that is fun. Yes, she's annoying, but I don't think she fucks anything up. And that little like back and forth plot with theirs is fun.
I think Char makes some good points with the scene with Goodnight and Miss Anders in the same room and Bond having to juggle that is a good scene. And the whole aspect of them trying to have sex the whole movie and everything getting in the way is also fun. But overall, I think Goodnight's a weak point for the movie. Char,
And
I
specifically
agree, like,
why? Specifically why? Because she's annoying? Because she is annoying.
Not necessarily that she's annoying. And I agree, like, so she does help at the end of the day, but she's always, it's like someone asks you to do a job and you do 90% there and then you get lucky the rest of the 10% or something. Or like you mess up, but it still works out. Like your dad asks you to wash his car and you wash his car, but you scratch it in the process. And it's like, ugh, like,
or like you forget and then it rains.
Well, I don't know about that, but
that would be luck.
But yeah, so like she has a job and she accomplishes what the end goal is, like placing the tracker. She messes up in the process, but it still results in being able to track Scaramanga.
We've picked up Goodnight signal, sir.
She has other jobs that she's supposed to do, and she is mostly successful. But it's the way she achieves it is just like not perfect, and it just ends up with her being, in my eyes, more of a nuisance to the whole job.
Do we really have to have her? Can we get her killed?
But again,
Can Scaramanga
what,
shoot her in the
other
head
than the
and
end,
she get shot?
What situation does she muck up? Like she does her job by following Nack, and then she's unlucky by Scaramanga throwing her in the trunk. Like she didn't like fall. Like Ditzy would have been like, "Oh my god, I fell in the trunk. Oh my god, Bond, save me!" But Scaramanga literally kidnapped her.
To the woman that is like probably shouldn't be a secret agent. We gave the keys to the car to the person that probably shouldn't be the secret agent. We should have just left her in the car. We should have said, "Listen,
but why give her the MacGuffin?
You're great.
Why
if
did
I
he
was
give
in
it to
that
her?
situation and I had to work with somebody,
why did he give it to her? He gave it to her because he was going back into the fray. So he's like, "Here, you take this. Don't lose it." Then Nack
I would have left her in the car.
So
I'd
she
say,
follows
"You
him.
stay in the car. You stay in the car. I will come to you and I will bring this to you." That's what I would do. If I'm dealing with somebody who is incompetent and can't do their job to the best of their ability, I'm probably going to handicap them a little bit and say, "Here, you sit this one out, you sit down, you do this." I'm not going to let this person be walking around screwing things up.
Hand her the MacGuffin and be like, "Get as far from here as you can."
Like don't be
You don't need
here.
to linger and try to
Why
do other
am I
stuff.
giving the MacGuffin to the girl that I know could probably screw things up, that I'm already getting the sense I'm like,
But guys, my point is, what had she screwed up? At that point, what had she screwed up? That's my whole point. At this point, Goodnight as a character, where has it been established that she's a f***up?
There's not one big mess up. It's just throughout.
Yeah.
Like
it's like one thing after another, and you're just like, "Oh, come on, can we kill her off? Can we just get rid of her?"
Again, the first one is the green rolls, which she recovers from.
Yeah, that's not bad.
And the second one is Scaramanga kidnaps her, which, like, I mean, Bond has done the same thing.
Yeah, but that whole
Bond,
thing,
dude, Bond has put tracker devices into trunks before. Well, and like, why shouldn't she have the keys? Like, and then Bond has to go get his own car.
Why doesn't the other guy have the keys?
What that leads to is Bond having to go get his own wheels. Why is it her fault that she had the keys? It's not a f*** up. It's unfortunate, but it's not a f*** up. And that's my whole point, is that you're like, she's a f*** up. What does she f*** up? And you have not been able to answer that question.
I did answer that question.
No, not
once.
Like,
she can put the tracker somewhere else on the car.
I'm like, no, she f***s it up. Like
she's been unlucky, and then she's overcome that unluckiness, but she's never just straight up, like, again, like, had she fallen into the trunk, "Oh my god, I fell in the trunk and then it shut and now I'm locked in." That's her being a ditzy, klutzy idiot. She got thrown in by Scaramanga. When she pulls in front of Bond, she, like, doesn't know any better. Like, how is she to know that she was cutting off Bond on a chase? And then Bond's like, "Run down this plate." And she's like, "Oh, I already know where it's at." Like, she's unlucky, but she doesn't ever just straight up f*** something up.
Could she not have put the tracker anywhere else on the car? In the Bond universe, does it have to go in the trunk?
I think the safest place is in the trunk in case it falls off. And she wasn't expecting Scaramanga. And I'm not trying to give her a pass. I'm just saying, like, sure, you have a strong enough magnet, like, you could put it just on the undercarriage. Like, maybe today they would just do the undercarriage. But she sees him get in the car. She cracks it open. Is it a little convenient from, like, a screenwriter's point of view? Sure. But we saw in Goldfinger, Bond does the same thing. When he had the option, he didn't put it on the undercarriage. He put it in the trunk. Because what if they hit a bump and it falls off? It falls into
But
the
a part
trunk.
of that,
Like I can believe that.
The problem with that is the part of that scene is Bond just so happens to be behind the trunk, and the trunk is open because he's putting the golf. They're putting.
But what's the difference
ties in there.
between the trunk being
it's
open?
It's the convenience of being able to do it at that moment and not look suspicious.
It's about the option. The option is to either
versus
trunk
like
or
I have
underneath.
to do the extra step of opening up the trunk. Where in that situation,
which
the
took
trunk
her
is
like
open,
which took her like 5 seconds. So I see it as not a big difference. Like again, my whole argument is that she doesn't. I mean, if anything, it was a better idea to take the 5 seconds to open the trunk than to risk the tracker falling off, right? I mean, now you could argue this. You could argue that they have the Solex and she should have just been like, well, whatever, Nick Nack. Like, who cares about Nick Nack? But she he's like, this midget has a gun on Bond and she's like, oh, he's a bad guy. Like, she's doing her job. Now, should she have prioritized the Solex over Nick Nack? Sure. Was it a convenience so that Scaramanga could get the MacGuffin so that he could, like, win the day? Sure. Was it also a convenience that Scaramanga didn't see the Solex on the floor? I mean, it's like a classic MacGuffin, you know, like we talked about, like the movie Snatch. Like, it's like the diamonds and Diamonds Are Forever. It's like the MacGuffin is just always moving between all these people. And like, that's what's usually fun about those movies is like, oh, I've got it. Now I've got it. Now I've got it. It's all over the place. But what we're talking about is like, is Goodnight a complete f*** up? And Rosie is a complete f*** up because she's like weak. She's constantly like yelling and screaming. And with this, it's like, you can say that maybe Goodnight's annoying in her voice, or maybe she kind of like moves in a ditzy way, but there isn't a time where she just like, where you're like, oh my God, like she's unlucky so far as she pulls in front of Bond at the wrong time and then she pulls through. She's unlucky that she's doing her job chasing down Nick Nack and putting this tracker on the thing, but then she's unlucky that Scaramanga happens to walk up and throw her in. She's unlucky when her butt hits the machine, but then she's like, Bond's like, hit every switch.
That's when I roll my eyes and go like, oh, geez.
I switched the tape in the machine.
You stupid twit, you've put the real one back in.
Come on.
I look at her almost similar to Tiffany Case, definitely in the end, where, I mean, she's literally wearing a
She's
a
just there in a bathing suit.
swimsuit, just like
there,
Tiffany Case.
you know?
And then Tiffany Case puts the cassette tape in her swimsuit. Goodnight hits the button with her butt. It's just like, all right.
Yeah.
Goodnight doesn't break the movie, but she's not a strong point, that's for sure.
Yeah, like had her butt not hit the button, then I think, like, I'm saying before all of that, she's maybe unlucky, but she doesn't like knowingly f anything up. When her butt hits that, it's like, okay. She didn't like, what's this? And touch it. Like, my whole thing is that she's not, I'm not trying to argue like she's
I feel
Tracy
like if you're a secret agent,
perfect,
you've gone through
you know?
training and you have really good awareness of your surroundings.
And she
Sure.
doesn't.
You're not going to
have
be
awareness
looking in a
ever.
hole and hit a button with your butt.
Yeah, she just seems like someone who doesn't ever have good awareness, and that really bothers me. When I watched this movie this time, I was like, I'm kind of watching almost like a first time viewer a little bit, right? Like I'm trying to focus on all the little plot details,
Which is what we're trying to do here.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
good.
That's good. That's good. And I actually like doing this. This is a really great exercise. But the
You've
thing
got
is,
a
I'm watching.
first-time viewer right here.
Yeah.
If you want to ask me some questions.
So Nance.
Wait, who is that? Wait, who?
Well,
Nance!
real quick.
Have you been there the whole time?
Real quick
Most
though,
of
I
the
just want
time,
to say
yeah.
this. When I was watching this movie this time around, I was like, you know, like when we talked about Honor Majesty's Secret Service, that was, you know, my movie that I really pushed for. And you had this whole bit where you're like, no, the intro should have been this, right? And like you were having your own version of the intro. And for me, I was like, the intro to this movie could have been even more interesting. And I think in one way,
How could it have been any more interesting?
Let me talk. Let me speak.
Go ahead. How could it have been any more
I think
interesting?
it could have been more interesting in the fact that either A, you had Scaramanga killing these agents, which I could see why they may not done that, because they're like, well, we kind of did that in the last movie. We don't want to repeat ourselves there. It could also have been something where we don't even see Scaramanga's face in the beginning of the film for a good chunk of the movie. And it would have been even more interesting if Scaramanga, like we thought, was a false ally again, where he could have been approached Bond. Bond has no idea who this guy is. And I mean, I'm just, you know, again, it's like what you did. You had your own version of this
I really
movie.
don't see any of that. Like, I think the way they did it was that prologue is by far not only the most interesting prologue, but I mean, it's like we literally just start the movie on this fantasy island. We're like, whoa, where are we? Who is this guy? And then you have a Most Dangerous Game style duel to the death where his servant is paying the guy to do this.
Oh, that would have been too easy. It's locked. You'll have to look elsewhere, monsieur.
You're saying that it should have opened with like Bond walking into the office and they're like, this faceless guy's after you.
No.
The movie establishes how
here's what I said. His
cool
face
Scaramanga is.
Hold here
right away.
I'm saying they could have done the same opening of the movie like that you love, and not shown his face, and use that as a way to get us intrigued to who is the man with the golden gun, and creating a bit more mystery. And as the film goes on, we're not 100% sure who the man with the golden gun is, and then it's revealed towards the end. Because I one of the things I love about this movie, one of the scenes that I'm like, I do love this scene because Bond's like. Has never, he even mentions it in the movie. He's like, no one's ever seen this guy's face, or at least, he's like, that was part of his plan, right? He's like, he tells,
everyone knows he has 3 nipples.
He's like, tells Q, everyone knows what this guy has 3 nipples.
That's all you see in the beginning.
Knows,
you don't see his face, you just see nipples.
Yeah.
Coming
it's
out
like,
of the
nobody
water.
knows that, but they do know that he has 3 nipples. And like, I'm like, oh, you could have done so much more with that. You could have been like, that could have been a big reveal to Bond, where like, we find out like, oh, like this guy that maybe Bond had been hanging out with, or he thought was an ally in this whole thing, was actually Scaramanga all along.
As the movie stands, that all pays off when he sits down next to Bond, and Bond is like, "Hey, random guy, like I'm just this isn't a dead body," and he's like, "Forget it, Mr. Bond." Like he reveals himself to be Scaramanga in that moment, and then Bond's first instinct is to pull his gun. And he's like, "No, my midget's behind you. Don't even bother." And then that allows him to introduce himself.
But it's not that I don't like Scaramanga. I like Christopher Lee. I like I like what he does, and the things that they do like connect as far as Bond versus him, I think do work. Like I love his backstories. Like he was in the circus.
When I was a boy, I was brought up in a circus. My only real friend was a magnificent African bull elephant. You see, Mr. Bond, I always thought I liked animals. And I discovered that I like killing people even more.
You know, and I loved his, like you said, like the motivation behind him. He's all money. There's no confusing this, right? But I do feel like the whole energy thing and all of that stuff, it just like it gets in the way of what could have been.
Why does it bug you though? Like, what is the problem with having this backdrop
it's so
of an energy?
Obnoxiously silly.
I can't help but think that
it's obnoxiously silly for
because you're like, it dates it. Well, it doesn't date it. What is your problem with it? What is your problem with it?
It's just, it's to me, it's a silly, it's a silly premise where it's like, okay, we have this, okay, and here's the other thing.
The world is always going through an energy crisis.
Hold on.
It's like
we have the solar agitator.
Countries would be going to war over that technology.
Let me finish. We have the solar agitator, right, in this movie.
Yeah.
But then, like, next couple movies, does that affect the other movies? Because
would you
in my mind, I'm like,
would you expect it to?
I mean, if it's a world-changing thing, like you're saying, like dude,
it's the government. You could say that the government covered it up so they can keep making oil money.
The oil sheiks will pay you just to keep solar energy off the market.
It just seems very strange, and it's like the last movie to me. It's like one of the things that bothers me a little bit.
No. Let's stay on point. You're talking about future Bond movies. I don't know what the that means. We're talking about this movie. And you're saying that because they developed some technology, we need to see it in all the movies hence. We're talking about this specific singular movie, and for some reason you have some problem with the energy crisis plot.
Let me ask you this, because I do get distracted by the end with the fight with him and Nack, which I think is great. I actually do like that part.
Yeah,
does he get the agitator, or does it get destroyed in the island?
He pulls it out, and he brings it home. Like, he gets it in the end.
He brings it home, okay.
He throws it in his shirt.
Okay. Yeah. I just think it's one of those things where it's like, I wish that wasn't necessarily the MacGuffin, and I wish that wasn't the part of the movie.
Why? Like, you haven't provided one reason why other than just personal bias. Like, you just don't like, because again, it's a loose backdrop for the main story. The main story is Scaramanga and Bond.
Like, so he has a laser in this movie now? Like, it's like, okay, yeah, the solar-powered lasers in this movie that we use to explode this thing.
This is the part I really like.
It feels like the screenwriters were like, okay, we have to have a giant set in the end of this movie because they always have giant sets in the end of this movie. Even though the story's like mano-y-mano story, we still have to check the box office.
Well, it's like we need an exciting escape. And how do we manufacture an exciting escape?
We need a cool lair, and we need to blow it up.
We need to blow it up the lair. And that, it just bothers me in the end of the movie. It's like, well, if you really wanted it to be about Bond fighting this other guy, and it's in this fun house, like, wouldn't it even be better if, like, they were fighting in where the power plant is, and then amongst the fight that they have,
all.
like,
They're
something
fighting
happened?
in a fucking fun house controlled by a midget. Like,
And the fun, and again,
that's so much
like,
better than fighting
saying,
amongst those big circular things. Like, are you crazy? No. The way they have the fight is fun as fuck, as set up from the beginning. But then listen, at the end, you have like, it's like 2-3 minutes for them to get the solar agitator. And again, that's just like, it's like capping off the movie. All of that in my interpretation, the function of all of that story-wise is not only to have like, oh, we got to have an explosive escape to run away. In that whole process, who do you forget about?
What are you talking? Wait.
You completely forget about Nack. During that whole escape, by the time that Nack shows himself, you're like, oh, Nack. Without any of that, you would just be like, wait, like, oh, Nack's going to come out.
What I want to know really is, at this moment, where would you place it in the ranking?
You still sure?
You tell me where you place it. I'll tell you where. Here, yeah, because I don't believe it's number 3. You've told me that in your personal list. But
by taking
as far as
on,
ranking is now,
I like that this movie takes on this personal story for Bond. This isn't just like another doomsday plot or whatever. This is personal, which allows his mystique to grow.
But what makes it personal for him, though? That's the other.
This is personal.
I know you've told me
this
in the
whole
past,
movie is
like,
personal.
Why is it personal for him, though?
Because his very life has been threatened by an assassin.
His life is threatened all the time. How is this personal?
His life specifically, McCurdy, listen. His life specifically is not threatened. Like, it's not. They say like, hey, we're gonna blow up England. They don't say we're gonna kill James Bond. Now
his
Spectre
life is in
and
danger in the other jobs, but as a circumstance of the job. But this is.
Yeah, his life is in danger at all points in every single movie that he's in. He knows that he's
there's
going
a
to always be in
difference.
danger.
His life is always in danger.
He's gonna be a target.
Yes, but he's never been called out specifically by an assassin.
Like the other movies, the bad guys are like, I'm going to kill you because you're in my way. In this movie, it's just like, I'm going to come kill you.
What I'm saying is they straight up say, Bond, you are on leave to go figure out this whole assassin thing, because now you're a liability, because this guy's coming after you.
I'll endorse your request to resign, or you can take a sabbatical and go to ground until this matter's settled.
The whole plot of From Russia with Love is to get revenge on Bond and get some goodies in at the same time. But like, objectively speaking, this is the most personal story for Bond so far as his career's involved, where it's like, this assassin is targeting you. Go like off and go figure that out before you jump back on your assignment. So like it's not just like a national security thing. It's very personal, where it's like, you got to go find, like, nobody knows Scaramanga. You got to go find him before he kills you, but nobody knows what he looks at. Like, he's got he's got the high ground on you. So his first step is, what victims do I know?
Bill Fairbanks, 002.
Oh, poor Bill. I miss him.
Now, the man with the golden gun didn't.
Officially, that was never confirmed.
Where was 002 when it happened?
Beirut, 69. In a cabaret with a lady called Saida.
Belly dancer.
Belly dancer that was his girlfriend has the bullet. He's got to get the bullet, and then he's got to go have the bullet analyzed, It goes through his butt.
Hotel, mister?
No. The nearest pharmacy.
There's no way to trace that bullet? No idea what it went through to get here.
They could have just analyzed the bullet they sent him, but...
Yeah. But the problem with that is, like, the movie, at the end of the day, it's like, well, that wasn't actually a bullet for Bond. It was just a cry for help.
Who do you think sent that bullet to London with your number on it? I did.
I think there would have been more conflict and more play out if they had just went ahead and not had this, like, trick where it was like, oh, actually, it was a cry for help. I would think I would have appreciated it a little bit more if it was like, no, it's actually, Scaramanga actually was after him. If there was a history there, or had, like we find out Bill and Bond were real close or whatever, like if there was something more there, if Scaramanga killed Tracy instead of Irma Brunt, and I know that's not the movie, but if it was something along those lines, like the intro of the movie is actually Bond, on a mission, and then we find out that Scaramanga kills.
You're saying you want it to be more personal? Dude, he killed a fellow
just saying, like, he's after you.
He killed a fellow 00. That is always going to have some weight. Now, I know that the movies don't delve into other 00s.
But
and
it's like
sometimes that
they
like
do.
it would be in the future.
Charlie, we know they
in the
do,
future.
But
in the future.
In the future, we know
but
they
as
do.
Of now,
but
they
I'm saying,
don't.
like, again, like when you say this movie's personal, and you're like, oh, it's such a personal movie. I'm like,
in the world of Bond, it's as personal as it gets.
I think this is just a case of a different definition.
It's two
personal.
professionals. Yeah. It's literally two professionals. It's like Red Grant all over again. Professional A versus Professional Z. Like Black Hat versus White Hat. Like that's as personal as it gets.
I will admit, I didn't, some things that you pointed out tonight, I never saw in the movie, and I think that I appreciate like you acknowledging or at least explaining these things, like the plane. So I still think the plane itself is a sight gag where you're like, you look at it and you're like, okay, that's just goofy. It just looks goofy. What I'm saying is I appreciate you pointing out that like in the past, Bond is the one who's using the goofy gadgets, and this time this guy is using the gadget to get away, and he best Bonds in that sense. And I'm like, I never thought of it that way. That's actually nice. I still think it's a sight gag, but I did appreciate like you pointing that out.
Wouldn't you like you would expect though that like if Bond did that, would you be saying the same thing? Would you be like, it's a sight gag? Or you'd be
I'm saying I'm agreeing with you that the sense that it's like, yeah, I never thought about that before. Like I'm like, oh, that's a good point. I think
I'm in the middle of you two on that one too. Like when I first saw the car with the wings on it, I was like, that's a little silly. And then we see the inside, his dash kind of changes, and it's like, oh, this is like a Bond car, but for a villain. And I was like, okay, I can get behind this.
Yeah, but it's like I don't know. If I'm being real nitpicky about it, though, you could evenly point out that like, what if instead the car gets in, like he gets into a garage and the car's in a plane and that plane takes off, or something else, like get into another vehicle. Like it would have been the same thing. Like he's already, like you would get the point across that Bond, you would have gotten the point across that Bond is getting bested by this guy without having the silly sight gag in between. But it works. I see what you're saying though. Is that it's like, well, Q even mentions it. It's like, well, we have these types of things, and it's like, that's the get to it. But I think they're like, as far as the goofiness, because when people describe, especially these Roger Moore movies, they talk about what is goofy about these movies, and that's one of those things where I'm like, that is like the indicative of like, that is why people think these Moore movies are goofy, is because you have things that are, the gadgets are sight gags in themselves, and like that's the little things.
Can you explain to me though, like, because I get like when you just say car plane, you're like, it's kind of like the last movie.
Boy, where you been all your life? That there's one of them new car boats.
Which is a funny line. Yeah. And then here we literally have a car plane. But like, I don't see it as, I understand that at first glance it would be goofy, but it's not impractical. Like it's like is the best thing to fly around in a car plane. But at the same time, isn't that really what a plane is? It's something you sit in and it drives real fast on wheels and then it takes off. Like it's not, like if you think about it for a second, it's like, like it's not outside the realm of Bond. I mean, like, and that's what I've been saying, is that if Bond did it, you wouldn't think twice about it. It'd be like, man, you'd be like, there's Bond's in a fucking car plane. Like, and what they would do maybe today is, like you're saying, they would drive into a hangar and he would drive up into a plane. And he'd get out of the car and he'd get into the cockpit and he'd fly off in like a much bigger plane. Or listen. Or he's on the highway and he's flying along and suddenly wings shoot out. And like his Bond's like, I got him now. And then all of a sudden, all the controls in the dash start switching. And then like, shoom, like wings come out and he takes off and Bond is like, holy shit. Like, maybe today they would have done that. Whereas, and honestly, that would have been fun.
Maybe that's the key to me, where I'm like, that movie could have been better. Like you could have done things like that, where Bond, you actually see this guy who not only has who's the man with the golden gun, but you have a guy that is essentially James Bond, but he's He's
the black
bad.
hat.
He's a bad version of James Bond. He doesn't have a country. He's more for money. And you could have had more of these gadgety things. And like, yeah, he has a really silly, the clubhouse thing. It's fun, right? It's fun. But, we could have seen that could have been the movie as Bond, just trying to get this guy, chase this guy down, all these things. We could have had more of those moments, I think, in this movie, but we don't.
One small little thing that I thought was just kind of interesting. I never noticed before, and it's not significant at all. But M's door has always been this leather, right? It's like a leather couch.
It's a cushion. Yeah.
It's like a cushion. But this time it had these little gold buttons on it. And what's interesting is that the scene with Moneypenny where he's like, Moneypenny, why didn't they ever confirm it? And she's like, because they never found the bullet, darling. And then she disappears behind the door. The door has always had these little like inlets, like little belly buttons, little navels. And this time they had these little gold buttons in there. And then they cut to the belly dancer's belly button with the gold bullet in it, and it's the same design. The bullet is exactly what those little belly buttons on the door were. And I'm not saying there's any significance there. It's just like, wait. Like, did they know
there
that?
could have been
like, did they do that on purpose? Because M's door never had those little gold buttons, as far as I'm concerned.
Was it used as a transition thing?
No, I'm watching it now because I have it on my computer. I see what you're saying. Yeah, it could have been like I think that was the thinking was like this would be a great transition because sometimes you have transitions that are a little.
They didn't zoom into it, but they just cut. But it's like little navel looking things.
Yeah,
and then they just cut to her belly.
That's a good
button.
observation because like sometimes movies have. Like you have very literal, like I get it. It's a really good match.
Yeah, like
cut
if they
to
zoomed
this thing
in,
to this come.
Yeah,
right. And then sometimes there's more like an idea of something. Like we see in one film, it was like in Diamonds Are Forever. It's like they pull up, Bond pulls up, and then you see hovercraft, and then next thing you know, he's on the hovercraft. Like things like that are a little like not on the nose, but it's like okay, I get the.
You're meant to connect A to B. The question with this is, were you meant to connect A to B? Like, were you meant to be like?
I think Charlie,
hey,
I think you're right. I think they were doing like that was. Maybe they just didn't match it, but it's like I see that. Yeah, I get it.
Maybe Guy Hamilton. Maybe there's a take where they zoomed in on the button.
And it just didn't
and
work.
And then they cut, and then they're like, "That's kind of stupid. Why are we doing that?" And then they just cut it out. But like, it's still there. I mean, like undeniably, it's like you have all these belly buttons with gold in them, and then you cut to a belly button with gold in it. So I just thought that was interesting. And then also that happens to be the design of the high fats doors are the same thing, where they're like big red doors with a bunch of gold buttons all over them. So it's like,
no, I mean, I think the movie was just being like, like gold is in the title, so of course we want to put that in the movie.
But it's like M's door is the same as High Fat's door. And
I
like,
see what you're saying.
I don't read any significance into that. It's just like something I noticed. Like, did they
definitely a production design, probably a production design thing. But I mean, again, that's an on-location thing too. So that could either be they built these design set doors for Pinewood for just the entrance part. And then when he actually gets to the actual location, that's separate. Or it was like when they saw the location, they're like, I love these doors. And then we could use this in the movie. Like, it could have been that. So, I like M and I like Q in this movie.
I will always love this M.
I like M in this movie particularly because you pointed out the last time that, like, Bond's like the know-it-all. And I think he's even more of a know-it-all in this movie. But, like, M is just, like, the father who has to deal with this weird dysfunctional family. And he has the know-it-all kid who's like the best and the brightest, but he's like, God damn it, like I fucking hate you, but like you're the best and the brightest, and I do love you.
Yeah.
But I need you. And then he has Q on the other hand, who's also a know-it-all, but it's like, and these two guys hate each other, and Q's just like, like saying, well, we have this, blah, blah, blah. It's like, shut up, Q. And it's just like, it's so good. Like that.
Well, you can tell, you can feel the like, you can generally feel the pressure on M. But this time specifically, like the whole government apparatus is like, M, we're talking free energy, bitch. Like we need, like, get the fucking Solex. And he's like his face in that one where he's like, you didn't get it. Like he's so, like he looks like he's going to have a heart attack the whole movie.
Yeah. And then you have the Bond, you should go on sabbatical. Like you're on leave. And it's like, unlike, it's almost contrasting to the Magic Secret Service scene where it's like he goes on leave or whatever. But this time it's like he learned his lesson from last time. It's like,
if I found him first, sir, that might change the situation.
dramatically. Wouldn't you say?
Yes, dipshit. Like
It's the father-son relationship that
Exactly.
they have, where he's like straight up, he's like, hey, I'm taking you off your assignment. And Bond right away, like, as we know, Bond hates being taken off assignments. He's like, dude, like, I want to do this. Don't stop me. And he's like, I got to stop you. I'll accept your resignation, or you can go on sabbatical or whatever. And then, and it's literally just like a wink, wink, nod, nod, like, go sort this out.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great moment between the two of them. And Bond's like, well, sir, what if I took the initiative and I went after him? And he's like, yeah, that would probably fix things, wouldn't it? You know, like I like little moments.
I do like that
that
moment.
You know,
I do like that.
Like this, I'm telling you, this M, he won't be around much longer, and he's just, you're gonna miss him. Like, he's just a fantastic M.
Yeah.
You're gonna miss him until we get Judi Dench. Like, until we get Judi Dench, you're gonna be like, I want M back.
There are very few people who haven't heard of Bond. British Secret Service, 007, License to Kill.
In this movie, you know, as much as we've been talking about how, like, Bond does have a reputation, they say repeatedly, Bond has a reputation, not to the general public, but to the spy world, which is exactly what you would expect. That, like, there'd be dossiers on him all over the place in different intelligence agencies. Like, that works. Random people knowing who he is stupid, and that makes for a good joke, but it's stupid within the Bondverse. That being said, we've talked before about how, like, the Walther PPK, when people are like, only one man on the planet uses a Walther PPK, this movie takes that into account, where the arms dealer is like,
mass production. Your Walther PPK, for instance, I leave to others.
That dispels with the whole thing of, like, only one man uses it. Scaramanga and the arms dealer, they know that James Bond 007 uses a Walther PPK, but they never say it's exclusive to him. It's his preference. Like, they understand, just like he prefers vodka martinis, he's not the only man on the planet that drinks vodka. So, like, all these little details are why, for me, this is, like, so far,
it's underrated versus being,
I think this movie is
like discarded as
far
much more as
underrated. I think people discard this movie, and I honestly don't know why. I mean, again, I think every Bond movie has missteps, and
they're not all perfect.
And
for
they're not all. I mean, we've talked before about how, like, Dr. No is technically perfect, but the scope is so low. Like, they really don't make any missteps in the movie. But, like, the scope is so small, and it was easy to be perfect.
More like a detective movie.
Yeah, it didn't reach all that far. It was perfect at its scale, and since then movies have been, like, trying to, like, up that scale, and they've either had missteps or they have not. But this is my number one. I put this movie at the top.
Yeah, and
I understand that you are like, probably going to disagree, but, like, I can't help but think that your opinions are just based on, like, other people's popular opinions. I think this movie is so easily overlooked, but when you watch it in just with that idea of, like, we've been watching this man for 9 movies, and he's just, you know, oh, he saved the world again. Oh, he saved the world again. This is the same guy who saved the world over and over and over, and now we're seeing this story, his personal story continuing into just the world. Like, this movie is about reputation. This movie is about, like, you know, it's living within that shadow world of the spies, and it's like your reputation versus mine, and, like, Highlander style, there can only be one, like a showdown. And again, all this stuff, like so far, it's like, you're like, oh, the car plane's weird. Sure. But like we talked about, that's Scaramanga pulling some Bond. Goodnight is annoying. Sure. Goodnight's annoying. But, like, when it comes to Bond and the bad guy, I think it's the best bad guy we've come across. And I think, you know, people would be like, oh, I wish it was Sean Connery. And it's like, some people would just rate Sean Connery movies above the rest because they just can't accept the fact that Bond could ever be anybody else. But Roger Moore, again, is a Bond purist. He is Bond in this movie. he's charming and he's like seductive. He's wittier and he's balancing all these things, and he's a fucking asshole. Like he's like pure Bond in that sense, where he's like not taking any shit, and he's like getting exactly what he needs to get the bad guy. And the whole movie, again, like energy crisis in the background. The movie is about, it's a personal story of this super spy going against this super assassin and besting that guy on his own ground, like taking advantage of that guy's ego. And that guy, Scaramanga has this odd man crush obsession with Bond.
Ours is the loneliest profession, so let us spend a few pleasant hours together.
How can I refuse such a gracious invitation?
Splendid! Splendid!
He comes in there and takes full advantage of it to like defeat him on his own turf. Now, like, it's interesting when you bring up like, well, what if Miss Anders was there the whole time and all that? And like, I can't see how, like, unless you laid out exactly how that would play out. All we have is the movie as it is, like, and within that realm, it's like, well, Scaramanga killing her is like, that only beefs up Scaramanga's character. And again, like for me, coming down to just Bond and the bad guy, I think Roger Moore is perfectly Bond in this movie. And I think Chris Lee as Scaramanga is like fucking stellar bad guy. Like just straight up equal but opposite entities going face to face. It's not our Blofeld stealing the world, and that's all well and good, but this is like our first foray straight up into the world of the spy and like how these people have reputations. Because again, for the millionth time, it's not you and me. You and I, all of us, we're not Bond. Bond, you got to put yourself in the character of Bond and how he has fought all these guys who have these crazy egos, and he's come out, and now we have this guy who's got like the ultimate ego.
To us, Mr. Bond, we are the best. I could have shot you down when you landed, but that would have been ridiculously easy. Like every great artist, I want to create an indisputable masterpiece once in my lifetime. The death of 007, mano a mano.
And where Scaramanga's like, I'll give you 6 bullets. You're 6 against my 1. I only need the 1. That's fucking fantastic. And Bond is just wasting bullets left and right. And, you know, and Nick Nack's like, you're down to 3. And then at one point, he's down to 0. He straight up loses his gun.
Oh, crap. My phone just died.
Great. Do we want to wait?
Mano y mano.
Mano y mano.
3 weeks later.
We're back! Everybody had Easter and vacations and stuff.
Nice little break.
Nobody's randomly tan. Nobody really looks different. Nans has a new setup. Anyway, yeah. Quick history. In that blink of an eye, we didn't have enough opinions to come to a conclusion on Man with the Golden Gun. We did nothing but disagree the whole time. And then we had tech difficulties where we couldn't continue. So we all broke up with each other for 3 weeks later. So, but now
there
we
was
have
a whole
Scott.
montage in a movie that you guys all missed where you know, we all like were reflective on each other's lives, and then we were like, man, we need to bring the band back together.
Yeah.
You guys missed it. It was
Ranked is coming back, guys. It's coming back. Well, it's like the Beatles. It's like, well, I'm in if Paul's in. I'm in if John's in. I'm in if Ringo's in. You know. All right. Anyway, so that was all. That was all the Beatles mashed into one voice. I love it. Anyway, where we stand is, idiot me think movie good, movie real good. I still, for me, it's a list topper. I might be the only person on the planet with that opinion, for all I know, but I think this movie is highly undervalued. I think there's deep fucking value in this movie that nobody sees.
Every episode's gonna have a GameStop reference.
Crossover.
But Yeah, we're not millionaires yet for some reason.
No.
And then McCurdy, your view is
Should be somewhere towards the bottom, but I'm gonna say this. Some of the points you made, I would say somewhere in the middle. It's kind of where I feel.
We mostly disagree on we agree that Goodnight is detrimental and she's obnoxious, but we agree on that, we disagree on the weight. Like, if this was a weighted grade, you're like, well, you really have to count that Bond girl in there. And I'm like, And then also just on other trivial things like the energy crisis subplot and stuff like that.
I've taken all accounts in. Goodnight, Nans, and McCurdy. I agree with you more than I agree with Charlie. She doesn't add anything, but she's a field officer. She's not a 007. So anything, all the mistakes she makes are almost understandable in a way.
They're all bad luck. Every single one of them is bad luck.
Besides the point where she has the Solex and she should just go.
All that being said, Captain Kirk, is this movie better than Goldfinger because of some minuscule stuff that Charlie's like, you guys, this movie is so much better than what people are telling you because of this, this, and this. It is much better than Goldfinger. I don't think it's better than Goldfinger or From Russia with Love.
Okay, if McCurdy's gonna jump into that though, this would be an opportune moment for me to go through my Goldfinger list.
His butt is hurty.
His butthole is dirty. Okay.
It's dirty, Scott.
Goldfinger is it's Citizen Kane. It's like untouchable. It's the greatest film ever made. Goldfinger's great, but it also has all these little nitpicky, why is that in there type of things. And it happens to be, in my book, any Bond movie with the word gold in it is going to be awesome. But all the same, let me just run through a couple of things. So Goldfinger has a prologue that has nothing to do with the overall story, whereas The Man with the Golden Gun's prologue perfectly bookends the overall story. This movie is unique and specific unto itself, whereas all the Goldfinger iconic stuff is almost interchangeable with every other movie in the franchise, as far as Connery's concerned. The gangster scene in Goldfinger makes no sense at all. He just tells all these guys his overall plan, and then he just murders them all. So it's why didn't he just murder them all? You can say oh, that's his ego, but usually that's what they do before they kill Bond at the end because they want somebody to give them validation or whatever. Yes, you're a genius. Yeah, that's usually what Bond is doing. He's like, yeah, you're a genius. But Goldfinger just tells all the gangsters what he's going to do with their money, and then he just murders all of them. Murdering them makes sense so he can keep the money, but why go through this big elaborate scene of explaining the heist except just to give the audience that information and give Bond that information? It doesn't make sense. Goldfinger has a bunch of goofy shit. That was my whole case against that versus From Russia with Love. It just not worth getting into, but it is just, it's goofy. Guy Hamilton he makes goofier movies. Chew Me is so much more believable as a name and therefore works better than Pussy Galore. But I'm not whatever. They're both awesome. Nick Nack and Oddjob are very similar, and people sometimes get them mixed up. But Nick Nack is more plugged into this story and is more than just the muscle. He's easily underestimated and can be very deadly and sneaky, and has a much more interesting relationship with his master than Goldfinger. With the whole he's trying to get his money thing. He's literally trying to kill Scaramanga, but they kind of have this odd love-hate relationship. Whatever. Their showdown is perfect for their characters, not a punch for punch or a goofy airplane death that Goldfinger had, but it's a straight mano-y-mano duel. Bond solves the problem with his dick. Oddjob's cool, and the Aston Martin is cool. That's really what it comes down to. Goldfinger, for the millionth time, I love all these movies, but you can nitpick every last one of them.
Mm-hmm.
At least up to this point. Oh, and Tilly Masterson is just as bad, if not worse, than Goodnight.
No, she's not. Because to me, Tilly Masterson at least is my sister got murdered. And regardless of that, it's not like she's trying to get in Bond's way because she's like, Bond, you just got in my way. I'm trying to go after the bad guy. And now you're just driving right up to me. did nobody in the Secret Service teach you, like, if an agent is, like, tailing somebody, maybe don't drive right in front of them?
But she went
Tilly
to pick him up.
Masterson
She went to pick him up. Like
she parked
she
right
just
in
like
front of the other car, and he's like, he's obviously ready to go to the other side. Hold on.
Wait, hang on. I know, but you're suddenly jumping back into all the same shit.
I am not jumping back into
the same shit.
It's not the same shit.
Yeah.
The problem is like, you're like, Tilly Masterson's just as bad. I'm like, no, Tilly Masterson, like, was seeking revenge, and yes, she dies, but at least she wasn't, like, getting in Bond's way purposely. It was like she was more focused on trying to do her own mission.
She shot at Bond, and then she tripped the tripwire.
She didn't know Bond was after her.
But she tripped the tripwire that then completely fucked up Bond's entire thing, getting her killed, and then almost getting Bond.
Tilly Masterson does not annoy me. Annoy me in the least.
Let me go! You're breaking my back!
What the hell are you doing here?
I want to kill him!
Kill who?
Goldfinger!
Well, I want him alive.
I want him dead. He killed my sister.
She's a terrible actress, and she probably banged the producers to get. She was hopping up and down on Cubby's broccoli in order to get that role.
Here's what makes this movie for me. The dynamic between Bond and Scaramanga is just brilliant. I love that the Scaramanga does not need to kill Bond. There's no need there. There's a competitive nature between the two that drives them towards each other that makes Scaramanga want to battle Bond. There's no need at any point, you know. I love that dynamic between them. I love the dynamic between Nack and Scaramanga. I love that relationship. He almost acts like he wants to kill Scaramanga.
It's such a weird relationship. It's like loving, but he also he would gain by having Scaramanga killed, but it's like Scaramanga has enough confidence that he never will be killed, and that pushes Nack harder to try to kill him.
Yeah.
But there's this affection there. Like it's such an interesting interplay between them. It is completely unique. Like that whole, and that's my whole hook, right? I mean, we have talked so much about Goodnight, and I don't give a fuck about Goodnight. I just, when she's around, I mean, and like as far as like on the superficial end of things, like she's one of the more unattractive Bond girls. But whatever. She doesn't weigh in on the decision for me. And everything we've talked about and how to improve this movie, it's all interesting. But like my whole thing with like McCurdy last time when we would talk about, like you would say, it might have been better if we hadn't seen Scaramanga for a while. Like we didn't see his face, if they'd hidden his face. But like saying that, like that's cool. Like, oh, that's a cool idea. But but it's not like saying that automatically means that what they did is bad. Like when I would say, hey, this is how they could have improved the prologue of Secret Service. It's because I think the prologue sucks. It's because I think that with very obvious steps they could have improved it. But like the prologue for this movie is awesome. Can it be improved? Yeah, anything can be improved. But hiding his face doesn't automatically mean it would be better.
I don't think it's objectively better though. And you're like telling me like, oh, Goldfinger's, it's better than Goldfinger's because it has something to do with the plot. I'm like, sure, but also Goldfinger sets up the character of James Bond, who he is, how he acts,
which we had already done for 2 films. Like
in this new, and for anybody who's going into the movie, you're like, okay, cool. Like he's James Bond. He uses we understand he uses his cunning. He has gadgets at his disposal. Like, I don't think that you can just completely disregard that. And just because it's like, oh, but we see Scaramanga in his fun house and how he kills these guys. And it's like, it's set up for the end of the movie. I'm like, cool, that's great. But to me, it's not like, oh, this is so much better than Goldfinger's. I'm like, it's fine, but it's not great.
It's a preference thing, sure. I'm not saying that Goldfinger's prologue is bad, but for that film, it's irrelevant. Like the prologue is irrelevant to the story.
If I'm quoting Charlie Myers here, though, it's like, what did you say? You said, I'm always going to go for the more serious Bond film. I'm always going to go, and this one doesn't do that for me. It
but
just
Goldfinger
seems very
is goofy. Goldfinger is not that serious.
This movie is very goofy.
They're both made by the same guy, and the guy made Diamonds Are Forever.
This one is much more goofy. Save what you want to say for Scaramanga. Are you serious?
Not that much.
Flying cars, a midget, a carnival fun house.
So
all these
little
things?
little people are goofy. You had something against little people. I mean,
it's a goofy thing to be like, yeah, we're gonna put a midget in the movie. Cool.
Yeah, but
or
why?
a little person, whatever you want to say.
Like, it's a goofy thing to have a Korean wrestler who throws a hat. I mean, who throws a hat? Really,
Honestly.
man. Honestly. Like it's like
even though he
Goldfinger
throws the hat, though, it's like he is still a adversary for Bond. Like he still fights Bond hand to hand, versus a guy who's just a little person who gets thrown into a suitcase.
Like Nick Nack is controlling a fun house, trying to get him killed. It's a hunt. It is a hunt. Like, dude, like had him and Scaramanga just gone punch for punch, it would have been boring.
And then it's like Deus Ex Machina. There so happens to be a James Bond mannequin in his thing, and then it's like, why does Scaramanga have a James Bond figurine in his house?
Because he's obsessed with being top dog. That's what the whole movie is about. It's about him having a man crush on Bond.
And then that even adds to the whole like plethora of what we talked about in Diamonds Are Forever, where it's like, is James Bond a celebrity now? Do people know who James Bond is?
Dude, he's a fucking assassin. He would know who Bond is. People in Playboy knowing who he is stupid. We agree that that's stupid. Scaramanga would absolutely know who Bond is because the whole movie is about reputation. The whole movie is about reputation, dude.
He counts on his reputation to terrify his intended victim.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Obviously, it's about reputation, and everybody within that shadow world, they know about each other, especially having these like long careers. Bond knows about Scaramanga because he should. Scaramanga knows about Bond because he should. You and me walking down the street shouldn't know who these people are. So yes, he has a mannequin of Bond because he wants that top dog.
I love Bond versus Scaramanga. I love that dynamic. I love how it's played throughout the film. I love Nick Nack versus Scaramanga. I love that dynamic. That he wants to kill him. He doesn't want to kill him. He's sad in the end when he kills him. Or it's because Bond blew up his entire inheritance.
There's that too, yeah.
There's one of the two.
He gets the jump.
I still, you can still tell there's a respect between the two. Goodnight, yeah, she's a complete and utter dunce. But I think in this case of being a dunce, she furthers the movie. She furthers the plot by being a dunce. Now, you two can argue, but I don't think she's.
My problem with your point, though, is that you're literally just saying, like, she's a driving force of the plot. Great. But that doesn't add to, do you think the movie's better or not because of it?
No, that's why I don't think she adds or subtracts. That's what I'm saying
and
about
I'm
Goodnight.
saying she subtracts because she's an annoyance.
I will say, though,
it takes me out of the movie, and I get annoyed, and I'm like, I want to see James Bond kick some ass and, sleep with women, but I don't need some...
Why?
I have noticed this irony, though. There's this really funny irony where again, objectively speaking, when it comes to Goodnight, each instance of her supposedly fucking things up is bad luck. She doesn't knowingly do anything. Like her job is to go pick up Bond. She pulls in to pick him up. And then it's like, oh, you blocked me. It's like, she didn't do it on purpose. She's pulling in to pick him up. And then like we talked about, she recovers. But like every instance is rotten luck. She's going to plant a bug. Scaramanga catches her in the act and he kidnaps her. That could have happened to Bond. Bond could have been planting that thing and Scaramanga threw him in the trunk. But anyway, the funny irony is this.
Women, walkie-talkie.
Bond's reaction to Goodnight every time is he just assumes that like, oh, Goodnight, you fuck up. You're such a fuck up. That's McCurdy. Like, McCurdy's reaction is exactly Bond's. Go back and watch those scenes, and it's like she pulls in front of him, and he's like, "Good night, you bitch," and she's like, "What? I know where it went. It went over here." And he's like, "Yeah, well, whatever. You suck." And then later he's like, "Oh, women. God, women are so like," because Bond's a hardcore misogynist, so he's just like, everything that Goodnight does is awful, and she's terrible.
Now
we as the audience know better because we actually see her from a view that Bond doesn't see. Bond doesn't see her get thrown into the trunk. We see it, but Bond assumes she's just a total fuck up. And that's McCurdy. McCurdy's like, oh, this dumbass bitch.
I'm stepping back and saying, from the point of view of somebody sitting down and writing this movie, was like, this is a great character. I think the problem with this movie is it's the filmmaking and every aspect of this movie is so goddamn silly that it just turns a lot of people off. To meet you halfway, I do like the idea that like Scaramanga is in a way like the reverse James Bond. I just don't feel like the movie does enough for me to be like, that's what the movie is. But I was going to say this, Charlie, the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, Goodnight, and I don't want to harp on Goodnight as much as we keep going on and on about her. Yeah. Because I do think there's other points in this movie where I feel like the movie's just weak because of other things. But like sometimes certain characters are inherently just kind of obnoxious and annoying for audiences. Like, for instance, people generally don't like precocious kids because they are also obnoxious and annoying. Yeah. Even though, like, on paper, you're like, oh, that sounds so interesting. A character that's, like, a complete idiot, but, like, somehow, you know, saves the day anyway. And it's like, that's great, but, like, I didn't come to this James Bond movie to be, you know, annoyed for, you know, whatever her screen time was. Like, 30 minutes in the movie. Yeah. With a character that's just like, oh, hi, Bond. Oop, sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Oh, hey, I think we lifted off. Like, I didn't sit for a Bond film to see this character. I'm like, no, I didn't come to the movie for this. You can give me other Bond girls. It has nothing to do with a Bond girl. It just has to do with the way they portray this character. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Well, and I think to respond to that, I think your track record so far has been, you put a lot of stake in the Bond girl. Whereas for me, the Bond girls boiled down to what they're really there for is they're just TNA for Bond to bang, and I could give a shit about their level of competence or, you know, like, because her character is that she's inexperienced. That's her character. Like your personal preference would be that, like, you know, everybody is competent. You get annoyed when they're not, especially if they're attached to MI6. Again, like she's no 00, but she's like this inexperienced field agent. Like that's her character, and that's how you just kind of do things differently. Again, even when it comes to Nack, it's like, okay, are we again just going to have the same old muscle, or are we going to mix it up this time? And then by making him a midget, it's like Yoda. He doesn't have that like physical, like he's not like Oddjob. He's this big guy. He's just going to beat the shit out of Bond. He's gonna do something different. And that's what I find interesting. Like when the franchise finds a way to break from the norm, because had this movie just simply been the same old, then that's when you just go, but it's it stands out to me because of these unique changes they make. And so like your personal preference is that you want to show up to a Bond movie and you want to have that badass chick who is a secret agent. You and it's like, why did they hire her in the first place? Like, and I understand all that. I just don't put as much weight on it as you do. That's where our personal preferences, and that's why we're doing this whole thing, to weigh those against each other. But I also want
to say that it's not just that one thing. It's just that's something in this particular movie that stands out very, very much. Like, I think if I'm judging these movies, I'm looking at the plethora of the Bond tropes, right? Like, how well is this James Bond performed? Or like, what's James Bond like in this movie? What's the girl like in this movie? Or girls, essentially, what the Bond girls like in this movie? What are the gadgets in this movie? How does this Bond movie handle the goofiness versus the seriousness? What's the tone like? And this also movie has weird tonal shifts, too. Like, those are the kinds of things that I'm going to measure these movies on. And I feel like some of the other movies seem to be very much more consistent on tone and characters. This movie is just very all over the place, it feels like. And that's where I'm like, I get, and I think a lot of people have said that, like, yeah, Scaramanga is a cool character, is a really great concept. I just don't think the movie does enough for him to be like, yeah, this beats, or this, like, you know, apologizes for everything else in this movie with, you know, whistle blood, you know, what was it? The whistle from the car chase or whatever, all that stuff. Like, it doesn't excuse that kind of stuff. And I'm like, you're like telling me that, like, oh no, this movie's great because it's about him and Scaramanga and like all the stuff. But I'm like, there's a lot of problems with this movie. Sure. And I'm not on board with it being number one. That being said, though, if it were my choice, I'd probably put it in the bottom. But I think somewhere in the middle, I would be happy with. I'm like, eh.
Do you have a spot? Do you have a
If
spot
I would-
reserved?
I don't think it's the top 3, and you know my feelings on her on Secret Service,
Yeah.
but I do think it's, probably could be above Thunderball, maybe.
So 5.
And
right?
here
That's where you would be.
is my thought as well. That I agree with you two more on Goodnight than I would agree with Charlie's previous arguments. I honestly believe that Scaramanga versus Bond and Nack versus Scaramanga, that relationship between those 3 drives this movie higher. That relationship, I just love it. The whole dynamic of the whole movie. Nack versus Scaramanga, and once again that back and back that I don't want him to die, but I want him to die, or do I? And then the end reaction. And just the man versus man of Bond versus Scaramanga takes us higher. So I would say my position for this movie, outside of Goodnight, everything else. And I would also like to say that from your guys' previous arguments, if Miss Anders could have been the Bond girl, like throughout this, if that was continued, that might have played out better. So that also brings this movie down.
Yeah.
Yeah, what if it was Goodnight that died instead of Anders?
Exactly.
And I think that's what
yeah.
But I think, that's the thing. It's like any other Bond movie would have done that.
But I would still put this movie at 3 or 4.
I thought that Scaramanga has sent the bullet to Bond /MI6 as like a "I'm coming for you" sort of thing. But
Yep.
in rewatching this movie, it sounded like that's not
That's
what
Miss Anders.
happened.
Miss
Oh,
Anders.
Miss Anders
I
sent.
think-
That's right.
Yep. She
And I
sent
think-
it to have Bond save
Sending
her.
it for help.
Something I wanted to ask you guys was that, like, is there any reason why they couldn't have just analyzed the bullet that was sent in the first place? Because it's a real bullet. It's not like it's like if it was fake, they'd be like, "Oh, this is fake," and it's just an empty threat. But like, so therefore, it must be real. So she had to have stolen. So okay, so like, yeah. The lie from the outset is that Scaramanga sent the bullet to just like I'm coming after you, Bond. And after having seen the prologue, where you know that, we're like, oh, he's coming after Bond. He just shot the fingers off the mannequin. Revealed later is that she sent it because she wants to be rid of him, but she can't leave, and she fantasizes about Bond saving her. So, and she's aware of Scaramanga's weird obsession with Bond. She even says he has a likeness of you. She steals a bullet, which like that could have got her fucking killed in the first place. So, anyway, so, but like, yeah, why, you even mentioned this before, Nance, why couldn't they just analyze the bullet? Bond, but the only thing Bond says is he's like, oh, because he's like, hey, look at that, it has my number on it. And then it's like, it'd be useless as a bullet. Well, yeah, because it has his number on it, but otherwise it's fine. And then right after that scene, that's when he's like, I'm going to go to Beirut and find the bullet that killed Bill Fairbanks, aka 002, and then he has that bullet analyzed. So like, yeah, right? Like, nobody can think of any reason why they couldn't have just analyzed the first bullet, other than the fact that like Bond was put on leave, but that shouldn't matter anyway. It's just like, hey, Q, can you take a look at this real quick?
The clear plot to me would have been, had other 00 agents been killed, and that was the intro, and we saw the end of the Golden Gun killing those other agents, and then it was like, oh, well, Bond, you're next. But the last movie kills a bunch of 00 agents in the beginning of the movie, and then he goes to investigate. And I'm like, sitting there thinking as I'm watching this movie, I'm like, that would have gotten me into the movie even more so than, Carnival Funhouse and all this other stuff.
But again, here's the problem with that. It's not just that Scaramanga just wants to kill a bunch of British agents just to do it. I mean, the guy makes $1 million a contract by just killing people that other people hire him to kill. He doesn't have some personal vendetta against Britain or against MI6 and all these 00s. He wants Bond because Bond's the best. If Bond happened to be a Russian, he would still want to go after Russian Bond. It has nothing to do with 00s, any other agency. It only has to do with these two guys' reputations. All fucking movies about reputation.
This is also brings me to the scene where I think a lot of people have problems with this movie. And I know, Charlie, you and Nans kind of were like, but his life was threatened in the scene. And I'm like, this just feels very out of character for Bond to be as aggressive as he is towards Maude Adams' character. And
Bond or Roger Moore?
Bond is constantly slapping women, like constantly beating the shit out of women.
If you watch the scene, though, it's like he is, I mean, like, slapping a woman once in the scene and minting the point across, like, I get it, but like, he's just keeps going and going.
Dude,
and I'm like,
she had a
this is
gun
Roger
on him.
Moore.
She wasn't.
Hold on.
You
I don't
act like
care.
he just takes his pants off and she's gonna just drop the gun and suck his.
I mean, it's Bond. He should be able to, charm the shit out of her.
She's also
But I also want to
the
say
other
this
guy.
part.
She's
Hold on, I
with
also want
the
to say
other
this,
guy.
though.
Forget about Scaramanga. I'm going to suck your...
Charlie, if we're living in this world where Scaramanga knows what Bond looks like and has a mannequin made of James Bond, like, she should know that this is James Bond, right? Like, why would you pull on the gun on the person that you purposely trying, like, your message?
Bullet,
yeah, she sent the bullet.
Wouldn't she be like,
then,
oh, yes.
Exactly. And then she would have been like, I the one who sent you the bullet. And he's like, wait, what? Like, there's not that scene. Instead, we get this scene where she pulls a gun on him. And it's like, I think the last time you were saying, well, it's like, well, she didn't know she was in danger. I'm like, she knew because she sent the bullet. And like, that kind of trips up the plot and the script of the movie a little bit, where I'm like, wouldn't it make more sense if she said, hey, look, I'm going to help you. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, and I've thought of that.
Please believe me, I'm risking my life to come here.
I think the answer with that, though, is that she is terrified. I mean, this woman has been terrified this whole time, and I don't think she's just going to jump into Bond's arms until she's kind of like figured out the situation.
Either, but pulling a gun on James Bond doesn't really make sense either.
Yeah.
Well, Bond surprises her in the shower. Like, what? She's going to be like, oh yeah, come on in here. Oh, Bond, you got my bullet. Come in here. Like, she slowly.
That scene could have been played completely different, but it doesn't make sense why she still pulls a gun on him. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Why would she request Bond specifically? The bullet maybe should have just said MI6 on it, and then that shower scene would make a little more sense.
But Charlie did make a point, though, that it's because she knows that Scaramanga has a fascination with Bond. And I'm like, okay, I get that. That's fine. Great.
Yeah.
But it's like, that being said, if she requested Bond, if she knows what Bond looks like because there's a damn mannequin in his funhouse... So she knows what Bond looks like.
Yeah.
And
I think she's afraid, though, dude. You cannot discount the fear that she is under. Like,
I am not discounting
her
the fear, but
is
the
not
choice of where you're
unjustified
going
because inevitably he does kill her.
Mistress cannot serve two masters. A difficult shot, but most gratifying.
She's afraid, but why would she be afraid of the person that she sent
a woman being
to save
surprised
her?
as she's naked in the shower is not just going to be like, hey, come on in. She's afraid. She pulls a gun on him, and Bond is being all playful, but she's like, it would be a little ridiculous if she just jumped into his arms, as opposed to checking out the situation.
I'm not saying that she should jump to his arms, but the fact that she has the gun on him and then realizes it's James Bond, you're like, oh, you're here. Like,
he's still
wouldn't
Bond,
that make more
though.
sense?
He's still
like,
Bond.
I don't know why she
on
keeps the
one
gun on her
hand,
when
yes.
she knows it's James Bond.
On one hand, logically, yes, but you're discounting the character who is under a constant state of fear. You are. A constant state of fear.
And then she's got the person that she sent.
Bullet. Can I suck your dick now? Hey, I gotta get these bullets over to Scaramanga. No. She's fucking terrified, and then justifiably so, because he blows her away with no regard. Like, Scaramanga's like, she's replaceable. Like,
I have no issue with
she
Bond
knows
being
that.
rough with her, but I guess in another, looking at that whole scene in a different light, like we are, he could have been like, whoa, like, hey, I'm Bond, like, you asked
didn't
for
know.
me to come help.
He didn't know.
He didn't know that. But
at that point,
he
he
didn't know that.
She revealed later.
Order of events, okay? He gets the bullet. He assumes it's Scaramanga. He goes looking for Scaramanga. On the trail of Scaramanga, he finds Miss Anders. He surprises her by breaking into her hotel room while she's in the shower. She looks at him like, holy shit. She's got him at gunpoint. They walk out into the living room. She's still got him at gunpoint. She phones the police. She hangs up because Bond is fondling the bullets.
He smacks the gun
Bond then smacks the gun out of her hand and gets the information out of her about Scaramanga. Then we have a couple of scenes, and then when he's trying to bang Goodnight, that's when I'm so distracted by McCurdy right now. God damn it. That's when Miss Anders comes in and reveals to him, like, hey, it was me that sent the bullet. I need you to kill Scaramanga, aka my lover, and I'll get you the Solex. That's when she unloads all of that. And every time I watch it, I'm like, I can believe that flow, that she doesn't just, because she doesn't like, and I'm sorry, men and women aren't the same. This is what chicks do. I need to make sure that the ground is solid before I step off the last one. She's not going to like let go of the previous branch until she knows that this branch is steady. Because as of now, she's protected under Scaramanga. She is literally the safest person on the planet because she has the top assassin who would like kill anybody that would fuck with her. But she wants to get away from him. So she needs to make sure that Bond can take him out before she makes that leap. Yeah. And look what happens when she does make that leap. She gets fucking killed. So it makes sense that she would be terrified to just jump into Bond's arms. And then suddenly, I mean, Scaramanga would then just like hunt her down.
He's a monster. I hate him.
Then leave him.
You don't walk out on Scaramanga. There's no place he wouldn't find me.
You need a good lawyer.
I need 007.
Scaramanga is the most dangerous man on the planet. So she needs Bond to take him out. I mean, it all adds up for me if you look at the character as opposed to what you would do.
Yeah, that makes sense. My other thing, too, so I never got the same impression you guys got with the dynamic of Nack and Scaramanga. I never thought Nack actually wanted Scaramanga to die. I feel like it's like they're like playfully kind of alluding to that.
It's like father and son. It's like, can't wait for you to die, Dad, because I'm going to get all your shit. You know, like it's weird.
If you kill him, all this be mine.
He could just kill him in his sleep if he actually wanted him to die so he could inherit that stuff. But he doesn't because they're close. Like they have a close relationship. They literally live on this island, just the two of them. Like every night he could be trying to kill Scaramanga, but he doesn't. Like and in fact he tries to avenge him at the end.
Yeah, I enjoy it, but I never thought Nack actually wanted Scaramanga to die. And I know Scott's saying he did think that and felt that dynamic pushed the film higher in the list.
You could interpret it either way. That's how vague it is.
What I'm saying is that is what they play at in the beginning. By he's inviting assassins to the island, continually, like, please kill him.
I assume Scaramanga tells Nack to do that, though.
Yeah, well, and that's their relationship. Scaramanga's like part of your job is to like Scaramanga gets off on killing people, but he's bored because he's killed everybody. It's literally the most dangerous game. It's this guy who is bored because he's killed nobody can kill him. So he's like, so Nack is actively bringing top assassins to the island to participate in this freaky deaky game between the two of them.
I fooled you.
It's a very unique relationship between these two, and
it's a playful back and forth.
That's where it's like I don't think it's just like, oh, it's a midget for the sake of a midget. I think it's a fun turn from all of the henchmen we've had before, where it's again like Yoda. He doesn't have physical strength, but he runs the whole show. It's not just like a midget for the sake of being a midget. It's a little deeper than that, and then you have his relationship with Scaramanga on top of that, and that's what's interesting. But okay, overall, when it comes to the ranking, Scott said 3 or 4. Realistically, that's fine by me. I'm not just gonna push for number 1 because I think it's so. I would be more than happy to drop it down out of number 1 so that this channel may maintain some credibility, because people would just fucking murder us.
You're like, because
of me. But all the same, I do think it's worthy of finally breaking our Connery triad of Dr. No, From Russia with Love, Goldfinger. I think it would sit pretty at 3 with the scope of this movie, even with its shortcomings. I can see it surpassing Dr. No. Like Dr. No, every time we're like, it's just so perfect, and it's and it's like it didn't aim that high. So therefore, it like had the room to just be like relatively perfect in terms of like what it was going for, and to be that excellent prototype. But like this movie breaks past it with even just on like the Scaramanga relationship alone. And yes, it has some Hamiltonian goofy stuff in there, like all of his movies do. But for me, this movie cracks past Dr. No's being small. The scope surpasses Dr. No for me.
I disagree. I would put it at 4.
I think it does come down to what Char was kind of saying with weighting, where he might not put much or any weight on the Bond girl, where McCurdy, you might put more than he would in different aspects of all these different James Bond tropes. So for myself, I do find the Bond Scaramanga dichotomy like the most interesting of all the movies we've seen so far. But Goodnight does bother me too. So
to me, this movie has always felt like Scaramanga and Bond are cool, and then the rest of the movie is shit. Like that's how the movie feels to me. And that's why I'm like, I don't rank it as high as you guys, because I'm like, it's got a really cool, it's kind of like the opposite of Thunderball, right? Because Thunderball, we were like, there's got a like really great cinematography. It's got this kind of somewhat really good relationship with Domino, but Largo's sucks like a lot.
Yeah.
And you got other things that are really good about the movie, but like the villain sucks. And then this movie to me is the opposite. The villain's really great. The performance is really great. And sometimes I'm thinking like, I think you guys just really like Christopher Lee. But to me, I'm like, the rest of the movie
No doubt.
is kind of atrocious. And I'm like, that's how I'm seeing it. And I'm like, I just don't think it's 3. I will live with 4. Like, I will live with the film that I'm like, no, this one's like one of the best films that they've ever made. I'll live with it above that movie.
Okay, so
like,
at this point, we're really trying to figure out like okay, like our Untouchable 2, Goldfinger, and From Russia with Love. Like those, those continue to be our dudes.
I'm good at 3 also myself. Sounds like maybe Scott, you're 1 down. McCurdy's a couple more down.
Again, no. Again, I am 3 or 4, but
didn't we not talk about like a long time ago? It was like what makes a good movie versus what makes a good James Bond movie. And to me, this movie is not a James Bond movie. In the plethora of all the other films, it just really doesn't add up to a James Bond movie for me.
But again,
but what is a James Bond movie? He has to drive around in an Aston Martin. I mean, that's where I
differ. I
differ.
Had to drive in an Aston Martin, but like
that's where I differ.
Aston Martin. Gadgets,
better gadgets,
better girls,
better girls.
And as we talked about, there is no like we don't have a definitive like requirement. Like we never once said like the rules are it has to be more Bond than not. We just said that like that's kind of that was what our discussion for From Russia with Love versus Goldfinger came down to, was like, well, what's better to be like, because you guys would be like, oh, but it's so Bond. And it's like, what does that mean? Well, it means he's like driving in a cool car and he just got the babe,
With Dr. No, they had a movie with a budget of $1 million. They made a really smart spy thriller.
Yeah.
With some decent action, a great character, some stuff that we're like, oh yeah, this like you guys who never seen Dr. No, we were actually kind of into. And we're like, oh, this is actually a pretty cool movie. I didn't even know about this. Versus a movie that's like, gag after gag after gag and bad sound effects, and it's like you were trying and you made a silly movie versus you made a good spy movie for $1 million.
I don't see gag after gag after gag.
I'm not talking exterior gags. I'm talking Bond. Roger Moore brought a very serious Bond, slapping bitches, punching bitches, getting ready to shoot Asian guys in the dick.
McCurdy says 4. Nathan says 3. I say 3.
Get f***ed.
What do you say, Scott?
Suck my...
Because you can't go 3.5.
McCurdy. That's what I say, Charlie.
Here we waited 3 weeks to get Scott in, and he comes in with... This movie is unique. Like, if you just, like again, objectively speaking, this is unique amongst all that we have so far.
Yes.
And again, the reason I lay out that it's unique is because Bond is immediately let go from MI6 to handle some personal business. That personal business is that he's been threatened by the top assassin on the planet. the story itself comes down to your reputation versus mine. Bond's reputation, as set up by all these adventures we've seen him go on so far, they come to a head where now it's like the Avengers, where it's like strength invites challenge, right? When they're like, why are all these bad guys popping up? It's like, well, because the Avengers rose up, so that strength invites challenge. Bond is like number one dude, and somebody inevitably pops up and is like, I want to be number one dude, so I'm going to kill that motherfucker, and I'm going to take I'm going to become world champion. This movie isn't just Scaramanga's on an island and he's going to use the Solex to blow up all of China or whatever, and Bond's got to go in there and save it. That stuff can be fun, but at this point, we've had movie after movie after movie of that. Now, suddenly, it's personal. It is a personal story for Bond, and not the personal in the sense that he's going to go get married and fall in love and all that shit. It's personal so far as Bond's reputation within the shadow world of spies and assassins versus another guy's reputation within the shadow world of spies and assassins, and how those two champions are going to meet and go head to head, mano a mano. That's what the movie means to me. That's where I put it above Dr. No, but below Goldfinger and From Russia with Love. Goofy shit aside, I was the first to be like, yeah, it's got some missteps and some goofy shit, but that unique quality is what stands out to me. Plus, yes, Chris Lee is awesome. Scaramanga is a lot of fun. I wish there was a ton more Scaramanga, but like too much would maybe not be a good thing, right? Like because that would kill his like that paranoia that he kind of creates in the beginning, where it's like he could be anywhere, and then he pops up out of nowhere to who you think he's going to shoot Bond above the bottoms up or whatever. That's what does it for me. I mean, I've said this whole time that like usually the bad guy is going to drive my decisions, and I think this bad guy is wonderfully unique. And then I just have a boner for the Golden Gun. I mean, who wouldn't? It's like the coolest fucking thing ever, you know, and he just pulls it up out of nowhere, you know? So that's what does it for me. And then Dr. No is like a good prototype, but like now we're reaching more modern Bond movies that might begin to surpass it, you know, in the same sense that like take any other franchise and it's like over time, people cling to the old stuff. Like, no, only the old stuff is good and the new stuff is garbage. It's like, well, after a while, they just make better movies. It's like comparing like old Batman to new, and some people, oh no, 90s Batman is for me. It's
like you have a point where at some point, as far as what is acceptable for an audience, what can an audience take starts to change. I mean, there's a lot more to that discussion just besides, you know, equipment got better, but it was also things that you couldn't do in the 60s. What you could show, what you could see became much more accessible with rating systems and other things that they were able to get away with. Things like making a much darker Bond, which we'll see down the road.
And then reverse of that is Star Wars, where it's like, well, now we have the technology to do what we couldn't before, but then But then the story suffers because the focus is on technology. So it cuts both ways.
So okay, Scott, where you land? Because I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
Sounded like he was saying 3.
I would hate for it to come down to a vote, but like
so
well, as it stands, I'm at 3, Nancy's at 3, McCurdy's at 4. So you either tie this and we go on and McCurdy loses sleep. Nans, why 3?
I hate to just say I agree with everything you said about Dr. No, but it really is like you said, it's like Dr. No is a solid prototype, but you know, it's the first one, and it's, you know, James Bond has evolved since that first movie and incorporated other tropes or different, you know, we don't want to use the certain words to explain James Bond, but it really, you know, went to another level, and Dr. No is just like not quite there, but still a really solid movie. From Russia with Love on the other bookend, I suppose, is just another sort of different class, much more serious film that we all enjoy. So I think The Man with the Golden Gun fits fairly well between those two films.
Okay.
I'm like, you guys are fucking nuts.
Just like
you are so fucking far nuts. Like, I'm like, Charlie, I want you to go out on the street and tell people this opinion and have like a little table that says "changed my mind," because that's how nuts you are. That's how insane I think you are. Like I'm like,
none of the movies are perfect. They all have their flaws and they all have their strong suits.
Mhm.
I remember for the Goldfinger episode, while I agreed that it was near the top, I didn't love that that Bond was like in captivity for a good portion of it. I mean, I could nitpick any of these movies, but so in the nitpicks, I certainly agree with McCurdy. Like, Goodnight's not great, Hip's not great, the slide whistle is horrible. J.W. Pepper, I know McCurdy, that's actually one that you kind of like, but if you fix all these nitpicks about within Man with the Golden Gun, I could see it being near the top because the core of it, the Scaramanga versus Bond, I think is the best of all the movies.
That's what it comes down to for me. Like I'm so willing to forgive stuff because of that.
That's what we're arguing. You either prefer Scaramanga versus Bond and relation to those two, and that simple dynamic of man versus man, only one can survive.
Yeah.
Or we prefer the simple perfection of Dr. No.
Well, and that's what I'm saying.
That's what separates the two, if we're gonna find anything.
Yeah, those are hard to put on to put it on an even keel would be like, well, okay, the relationship of Bond versus Scaramanga or Bond versus Dr. No. I mean, if you line those up, undoubtedly it's Scaramanga.
Yeah.
Like, undoubtedly. Yeah. Dr. No is just again, it didn't reach that far, and that's what it comes down to for me, is that the relationship between Bond and Scaramanga pushes it above the simplicity, the simple perfection of Dr. No. I completely agree with McCurdy that there are all these little things that, like, I mean, Bond doesn't have to be serious all the time. I prefer, I mean, you dangle Daniel Craig in front of me and I'm going to go, that's what I want. That's what I want. But back in the day, they made movies differently. This movie as a self-contained movie, without comparing it to anything to come, they have these little fun moments that I legitimately laugh when Bond says, "I sure am, boy."
You're not thinking that.
I sure am, boy.
And like, should Bond be saying that? Well, I don't know. It makes sense in the moment, and it legitimately makes me laugh.
Bond had a lot of brilliant quips in this movie.
I know he has a date at the Bottoms Up Club tonight.
How will I recognize it?
He's not like other people. He has 3.
Fascinating anatomical tidbit, but probably the most useless piece of information I ever heard. Unless, of course, the Bottoms Up is a strip club, and Scaramanga is performing there.
Bond is clever in this movie, whereas in Live and Let Die, Bond is just speaking in these awkward and vague puns that are groan-worthy, whereas in this, he's a little wittier, and I just appreciate that he's a f***ing asshole to everybody he comes across. Like, I think that's where I feel him as being Bond. But then he has funny, goofy stuff like "I sure am, boy." But it's all part of a package. Now, again, if somebody could jump into the past and put Casino Royale in the projector, I think everybody would be like, "What the f*** is this?" But like, we are in that time, as we've talked about time and again, where it's like they are putting in all these things that they're gonna try to please an audience and bring an audience into a franchise that may have been dying at the time. So it's like, let's put our Bruce Lee moment in there. Let's put in let's add in all these elements that will make it a little more universal rather than specific. Like, some people might watch Casino Royale and be like, I don't like, it's so dark and depressing. I don't like it. and then they watch Roger Moore and they're like, I mean, there are plenty of people who prefer Roger Moore movies. It's a cup of tea argument, right? What we're trying to do is determine whether or not this particular movie managed to transcend the first movie ever made that was held back by being the first movie ever made.
This movie has a lot of goofy stuff. It's chock full of goofy.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. No doesn't have as much goofiness into it. It tries to play it straight throughout the entire movie. Yeah, you have the three blind mice gag in the beginning of the film, but like I'm willing to buy it because it's at least a clever way of, you're having three assassins kill a guy in the beginning of the movie. And yeah, there's the tank or whatever, the dragon. And I know Charlie's going to harp on it, like, yeah, it has that goofy stuff, but it has this really good relationship with Scaramanga. I feel like you're weighting that so much more that it's like, that's what makes the movie so great. And I'm like, I don't think it makes the movie amazingly great. I really don't. And also, if I'm to be perfectly honest, I don't think all of that is there. I think you're kind of seeing things that aren't quite there to an extent where I'm like, give me more, and then maybe I would 100% agree with you. But like, it's kind of maybe subtly hinted at, and that's where I'm like, I think Dr. No is still a better movie. I mean, we've argued this 1,000 times. It's perfect and it's simplicity.
Sorry, Scaramanga was from the beginning. Dr. No had almost no involvement besides a name that entire movie, besides 10 minutes.
Okay, you're arguing apples and oranges there, bud. You're arguing
Dr. No had 10 minutes at an end of a movie, and sure, there was dynamic there.
The whole
over
movie
dinner
is Bond discovering what is going on in Jamaica.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if Scaramanga is not in, or if Dr. No is not in the whole movie.
Yeah,
he has to figure out who Dr. No is.
But I kind of personally,
Scaramanga, on the other hand, it doesn't matter. Like, that does not matter to me.
McCurdy, granted, though, you have said numerous times that you prefer a more active bad guy. We've reached a point where it's going to come down to personal preference. Like, it's just going to be.
Yeah.
Do you have an overall feeling of 3 or 4? And for me, it's 3. For Nans, it's 3. For McCurdy, it's 4. You're saying 3?
And if I was being completely honest with myself, it'd be less than 3. Like, but I'm at this point now where it's like everyone's arguing it's going to be this, and I'm like, fine, let's just make it that, because I can't keep going on and living this life where, we're trying to figure out where this movie lies, and I'm like sitting here like, you guys are all effing nuts, and I have to be on a podcast with you where I explain the Bond movies. I just can't do it.
Podcast.
Okay. Can we just?
It's a lie.
Scott, can you?
Honestly, all right, fine. It's
if
3.
You want to live with guys, if you want to live with all the hate comments, you can.
Because McCurdy, hold on. It's 3 purely because Scaramanga is a better bad guy than Dr. No.
He has more hands.
That's it.
He's got.
He does
better guns.
He does have better guns.
More nipples.
He has more nipples.
He's got more nipples than anybody.
He is. It's from
nipples.
beginning to end. I love the dynamic of a bad guy versus a good guy. And that is
Scott. I really love movies with bad guys with 3 nipples. It's the best thing in the world.
They are again.
Yeah.
They are equal but opposites.
For 3 nipples.
That's what's fun about these guys.
An extra fucking nipple to lick.
These guys are Batman and Joker. These guys are equal but opposites. Bond could have just as easily turned into Scaramanga. Scaramanga could easily have been taken in by MI6. Again, Scaramanga is obsessed with money, where Bond is obsessed with country and loyal to country. And that interplay is what does it for me. That's where I think this movie is just, again, objectively unique within the collection of Bond movies. It's unique.
Yeah.
And yeah, it makes some missteps, but I overlook them because of that uniqueness and Scaramanga himself.
This movie isn't one that I'm like, oh, I love this movie. It's my favorite. It's towards the bottom of the list. It's not just me, Charlie. It's a lot of people. I don't
give a about what anybody outside of this podcast cares.
I'm not going to yell anymore. I do not care if you don't see that. But the truth of the matter is, I'm not the only one. You can convince these guys,
you are
but
part
I'm
of
not
a crowd
convinced.
that
But
loves Secret Service.
You can convince these guys, but I'm not convinced.
As one of the outside guys, I've heard that both your beloved of Her Majesty's Secret Service and this movie both have alternate fucking freaky fans that love it or hate it.
Polarizing.
So suck my
I'm not going to do that.
I like
I'm not
this
going to do
movie.
that. But what I am going to do,
And I backed you in the last one.
what I am going to do is I'm just going to say,
So
let's
don't
end
tell
this.
me Charlie convinced me.
Let's put a smile on our face.
I like this movie.
That's great. I like them too. I like all the movies.
We came to a conclusion. Oh
we ended this thing. I'm done.
Okay.
That's the best part about
Okay,
this.
Scott, that's great.
McCurdy, to your point, outside of the four of us, there's going to be people who think we're nuts. That's what groupthink is. That's where everybody thinks that Citizen Kane is the greatest movie ever made. And yeah, it's great, but like it's been surpassed. Sorry. Oh, it's been fucking surpassed at this point. So
Avatar.
Yeah, like even Avatar might be better.
Avatar.
No. Anyway, but
Avatar 2.
Regardless, we came to our conclusion. We're putting it at number 3. Goldfinger at number 1.
Goldeneye.
From Russia with
From
Love,
Russia.
number 2. The Man with the Golden Gun, number 3. Dr. No at number 4. On Her Majesty's Secret Service, number 5. Number 6, Thunderball. Number 7, Live and Let Die. Number 8, Diamonds Are Forever. Number 9, You Only Live Twice. There we go. Any of you that disagree with Man with the Golden Gun, you think it sucks, go ahead and suck McCurdy's in the comments and
Oh,
you know what?
don't do that.
McCurdy, set
Don't
up
do
a
that.
Patreon.
Don't
set
do
up
that.
a Patreon.
Don't do that.
Send
Don't do
money
that.
that's going to
No.
go to
Don't
McCurdy
do
if
that.
you love the
Don't
Man
do
with the
that.
Golden Gun, or if you hate the Man with the
We
Golden
should
Gun.
each
Anyway,
have
don't
our
do that.
own Patreon.
But-
have some class. Have some class like
Regardless,
some of these
though.
other movies on
Oh
this
no,
list.
dude, get
Give a
paid while you
dollar.
can, McCurdy. Get paid while you can. You've got guys who love On Her Majesty's Secret Service and they hate Golden Gun. Get paid, and then you can buy a Golden Gun.
Make t-shirts.
Our
But anyway.
Russian friend will
All right, but
surely
I'm
agree.
going to end this. I am going to end this because I know you love this movie so much. I want to end this. Let me
You
end
got it, though? You got it? You
I
know
got
what?
it.
Okay, go.
I know how this is going to end.
Yes.
We had one very great actor in this film. One of the most best actors of all time.
We are the best.
I'm George Bushing it real hard right now.
Most best for show.
Mo best for show. He was also so happened to be Ian Fleming's step cousin, which we had talked about way back at Dr. No.
Yep.
I'm talking about, and I believe, if I'm not correct, Sir Christopher Lee.
Yes.
Is that correct? Dracula, Count Dooku, Saruman, you name him. He's always played a great villain. He is fantastic in this movie. I do not deny that about him in this movie.
That's where we can
Wicker
all
Man,
agree.
We all agree with this. I'm not in disagreement here.
And
So here-
and beyond, like everybody on the planet can agree that
he is a
Scaramanga, Christopher Lee,
is a very good, and so much so that one of my favorite Bond video games, he plays one of the titular.
Mission accomplished. Titular.
Mission accomplished.
Titular.
He plays a major role in one of my favorite Bond games, being GoldenEye Rogue Agent. Right?
Yeah.
Here is
Rogue Agent.
my empty glass,
Badass.
unfortunately, because
Well, you got droplets in there.
I drank
You
everything.
had to drink to deal with
I
it.
had to
have
drink
a fresh
dried up.
Guinness.
He's
For
dried
to
up.
Sir Christopher Lee, who had recently passed, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, like
Yes.
five
Very
years
recently,
ago,
sadly.
5-6 years ago.
It feels like yesterday.
Recent.
Yeah. To Christopher Lee.
To Christopher
Chris
Lee.
Lee.
To us.
Good night, good night. Sleep well, my dear. No need to fear. James Bond is here.